Chapter 136. Bandit Army. Hearing Yi Xian's words, everyone's expressions turned strange. Bandits? Lu Banzwang also looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Yi Xian smiled. Is the name not nice? Everyone could not help but look at Yi Xian. Was the name nice? Bandit Army. It felt a little strange. Lu Banzwang suddenly said, then it's Bandit Army. Since Lu Banzwang had no objections, the name could be said to be set. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian without saying anything. No one knew what he was thinking. Although they were not very familiar with Yi Xian, they all trusted him. Similarly, Yi Xian also trusted Lu Banzwang and the others. After all, they had experienced several life-and-death battles together. At this moment, the voice transmission stone in Yi Xian's bosom suddenly vibrated, and a voice came from it. Be careful. Be careful. Yi Xian frowned. Just as he was about to reply, a man approached slowly from among the heavy cavalries in the distance. The man was in his 20s and wore black clothes. His hair was white like snowflakes, and he held a long sword with his right hand behind his back. The sword was about 3 feet long and 2 fingers wide, and it emitted a faint glow. Swordsman. When he saw the man in black, Xiahou Dao's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. Lu Xianxian. Qingzhou martial roll ranked 4th. At the same time, he was also a Sword Dao Grandmaster. Together with Yi Xian, there were 2 Sword Dao Grandmasters present. Lu Xianxian slowly walked toward Yi Xian and the others, but at this moment, Xiahou Dao suddenly said, "You can't kill those 12 people alone." Lu Xianxian glanced at Xiahou Dao. So you're waiting for a group fight? Xiahou Dao frowned. At this moment, Lu Xianxian said again, instead of being a human, you chose to be a dog. With that, he turned and walked toward Yi Xian and the others. Behind him, Xiahou Dao's expression was extremely ugly. Lu Xianxian walked in front of Yi Xian and the rest, his gaze landing on Yi Xian. Battle. 1-on-1. Yi Xian faced Lu Xianxian. It seems like not all of your people are here yet. Lu Xianxian stared straight at Yi Xian. I'm only here to fight you. Yi Xian nodded his head and hopped off the black wolf before walking towards Lu Xianxian. Right at this moment, Lu Xianxian suddenly disappeared on the spot. At the same time, a spot of sword light appeared on Yi Xian's forehead. This wisp of sword light came very quickly and silently. However, this wisp of sword light stopped half an inch away from Yi Xian's forehead. Because Yi Xian's sword moved. Boom! Yi Xian and Lu Xianxian suddenly returned to their original positions. The two of them were separated by over 60 feet, and the ground between them was covered in cracks like a giant spiderweb. After a moment of silence, Lu Xianxian suddenly walked slowly toward Yi Xian with his sword in hand. With every step he took, the sword in his hand would tremble violently. At the same time, the sword intent and sword aura emanating from his body would strengthen. When he was still 30 feet away from Yi Xian, the sword aura and sword intent emanating from his body had already reached an unimaginable level. This sword intent and sword aura caused the ground within 50 feet of him and Yi Xian to crack inch by inch. This sword aura and sword aura had already surpassed the Nether Passage realm and reached the Divine Unity realm. Moreover, this sword aura and sword aura were actually still strengthening. The expressions of Yi Li and the others turned solemn when they saw this. A Grandmaster of the Sword. This Lu Xianxian before them was a true Grandmaster of the Sword, the kind that was not exaggerated at all. At this moment, they had a different view of Azure Province. Although Azure Province was inferior to the Divine Central Continent, it did not mean that there were no geniuses and monsters here. Yi Li and the others looked at Yi Xian with a hint of worry in their eyes. Yi Xian was expressionless, and the spirit grace sword in his hand was also extremely calm, without any fluctuations. At this time, Lu Xianxian was less than 20 feet away from Yi Xian. The sword aura and sword intent emanating from Lu Xuanqian's body had already reached an unimaginable level. After a moment of silence, Lu Xuanqian suddenly raised his sword and stabbed. This sword had already surpassed the Divine Unity realm, but it had not reached the Myriad Dharma realm either. It should be said that this sword was in between the two. Yi Xian attacked. Although he cultivated the invincible sword physique, the power of this sword had already exceeded the limits of the Spirit Grace sword. He could only receive it head-on. He wanted to receive it head-on because this sword was worthy of his respect. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian attacked. One sword to decide life and death. Yi Xian did not hold back and used his full strength right from the get-go. His sword was completely different from Lu Xuanqian's. If Lu Xuanqian's sword was a gradual accumulation of power to the limit before erupting, then Yi Xian's sword was a sudden volcanic eruption. The two swords clashed head-on in the most direct and violent way. Boom! The moment the two of them clashed, countless sword qi exploded between them like a violent storm. These sword qi instantly cut the ground in front of them and around them into countless pieces. Lu Xuanqian's body was covered in sword wounds, and his entire body was dyed red with blood. Especially his right arm, which was almost severed from the root by the sword qi. On the other hand, although Yi Xian had injuries all over his body, they were pitifully few. He was almost completely unscathed. His physical body had forcefully withstood the sword qi that had been emitted. In this battle, Yi Xian had completely gained the upper hand. Lu Xuanqian looked up at Yi Xian, and the next moment, Yi Xian was already in front of him. At the same time, a sword was pressed against his neck. Lu Xuanqian looked at Yi Xian without a hint of fear in his eyes. "I've lost." With that, he slowly closed his eyes. However, Yi Xian did not make a move. Instead, he put away his sword and walked toward Lu Banzwang and the rest. Lu Xuanqian opened his eyes and looked at Yi Xian. "Why?" Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. "You could have chosen to gang up on me, but you didn't. Instead, you chose to fight one-on-one. Since it's one-on-one, let's stop here." "Stop here." By the time Yi Xian finished speaking, he had already returned to He Lang's back. From afar, Lu Xuanqian looked at Yi Xian for a long time. In the end, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Lu Xuanqian. A Dharma realm cultivator. The old man cupped his fists at Yi Xian. "Thank you for showing mercy. The Lu family will remember this favor." With that, he hesitated for a moment before pointing his finger. 10 white jade bottles appeared in front of Yi Xian. "Huh?" Yi Xian was a little confused. The old man said, "There are 10 supreme-grade golden soar pills in each jade bottle. Consider it a token of our gratitude." Golden soar pills. Hearing that, Yi Xian was delighted. What they needed the most now was this kind of healing pill. Especially. Yi Xian pointed his finger, and the 10 white jade bottles landed in front of Yi Li and the rest. However, Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang did not have any. Yi Xian faced the old man. "That. Senior, look at this." The old man's mouth twitched. With a point of his finger, 2 white jade bottles appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was a little hesitant. "How can I accept this?" Although he said that, he had already put away the 2 white jade bottles. The old man shook his head and smiled. This Yi Xian was a little different from the rumors. Without thinking too much, he cupped his fists at Yi Xian and turned to leave with Lu Xuanqian. At this time, Lu Xuanqian suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "I owe you a life." With that, he turned and disappeared with the old man. With Lu Xuanqian's departure, the scene became quiet again. The Tang Kingdom soldiers still did not make a move. Yi Xian and the others did not make a move either. Instead, everyone took a golden soar pill. For them, they had to maintain a state of fighting strength at all times. Neither side made a move. They were waiting for help. Beside Yi Xian, Ling Han suddenly said, "Brother Yi, big sister, what if their people arrive first? Arrive first. Hearing that, everyone's expression changed. If the Tang Kingdom's reinforcements arrived first, then it would be extremely bad for them. The situation would undoubtedly become extremely terrible. It should be said that it was a desperate situation. Lu Banzwang remained expressionless and did not speak. Yi Xian smiled. What else can I do? Of course, they would do it. How about we surrender? Surrender? Everyone burst into laughter. As Yi Xian had said, they had no choice but to do it. Thinking of this, everyone got over it. Just do it. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly rode the wolf toward the group of heavy-armored cavalrymen. Seeing this scene, the group of Tang Empire's heavy cavalry immediately became alert, and the surrounding archers all pulled their bows and arrows as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Yi Xian ignored the heavy cavalry and arrived in front of Xiahou Dao and the black-armored men. Yi Xian pointed at Xiahou Dao. Come out and fight. Come out and fight one-on-one. Everyone looked at Xiahou Dao. Xiahou Dao stared fixedly at Yi Xian without saying a word. When he saw Xiahou Dao remain silent, Yi Xian gave Xiahou Dao a thumbs up, and then he turned it down. Coward. With that, he turned and left. Meanwhile, Xiahou Dao suddenly walked out, and he walked towards Yi Xian with his saber in hand. Yi Xian stopped. Right at this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of Xiahou Dao. Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian glanced at Xiahou Dao. Go back. Xiahou Dao said in a low voice, Master should know what it means to retreat. He would definitely be wary of the heart demon if he retreated. Mu Qingxian was silent for a moment, and then he said, then admit defeat. Admit defeat. If he admitted defeat, then it wouldn't leave any grudges in his heart. Xiahou Dao looked at Mu Qingxian. I'm not convinced. There was a trace of disappointment in Mu Qingxian's eyes. If you don't know yourself, then how can you break through? With that, he turned and vanished on the spot. Xiahou Dao held his saber tightly in his right hand, and his face was gloomy. As for Yi Xian, he had already returned to the wolf's back. And at this moment, Xiahou Dao suddenly looked up at Yi Xian. I admit defeat. Admit defeat. As soon as he finished speaking, the saber in Xiahou Dao's hand trembled violently. At the same time, his body suddenly emanated an extremely powerful aura. He was going to break through. At this moment, Mu Qingxian suddenly appeared in front of Xiahou Dao. He glanced at Xiahou Dao, and besides praise, there was a trace of gratification in his eyes. Xiahou Dao looked up at Mu Qingxian. Why? Mu Qingxian smiled. It's very important to know yourself clearly. Go back to the academy. Xiahou Dao glanced at Yi Xian, wanting to say something but hesitating. Mu Qingxian shook his head. Someone will deal with this matter. Go. Xiahou Dao nodded, and then he turned and left. After Xiahou Dao left, Mu Qingxian turned to look at Yi Xian. Are you ready? Yi Xian grinned. Bring it on. Mu Qingxian nodded. In the next moment, his right hand pressed down lightly, and a thick book suddenly flew out from his palm. The book expanded explosively with the wind, and in an instant, it was over 100 meters tall and spanned across the horizon. After a moment of silence, the thick book suddenly flipped open, and then a long staircase made of light spread out from the book, reaching all the way to the ground. After a breath of time, 20 people riding on flaming horses swooped down. All of them were at the Divine Combination realm. Not only that, the flaming horses were actually all at the Nether Passage realm. Chapter 137. Dao's Soldiers. Yi Xian turned to face Ling Han. Dao's soldiers, are they very powerful? Ling Han smiled bitterly. Very powerful, very powerful. At this point, he raised his head to look at the 20 people charging over from the nearby horizon. In the divine central continent, the so-called Dao soldiers are the elites among the elites of a force. And these Dao soldiers are prepared for group battles, and are also responsible for dealing with some shady matters. And these people are all 1 in a million, truly 1 in a million. Yi Xian nodded slightly. He raised his head to face the 20 Dao soldiers that were charging over. Dao soldiers. He could already feel the terror of these Dao soldiers. All of them were in the divine combination tier, and they were the kind of divine combination tier that had not been exaggerated. Not only that, but he could also feel a sharp killing intent from these Dao soldiers. They were veterans of hundreds of battles. These people had not been nurtured, but had been killed. They were really powerful. Kuraki Academy had come to put their lives on the line this time. Yi Xian suddenly jumped off the black wolf, and walked towards the 20 people. Lu Banzwang put away the large flatbread, and also jumped down. She followed beside Yi Xian just like that. Ling Han and the others also followed after him. The 12 people walked towards the 20 people just like that. There was not the slightest hint of fear in the eyes of the 12 people. Yi Xian, who was in the lead, was expressionless. In his hand, he held a massive black sword, and the power of the earth had already gathered in his body. The large black sword was propped on the ground, and everywhere he passed, the ground cracked inch by inch. Lu Banzwang's lily-white hands slowly clenched, and her whole person actually became slightly illusory. Just when there was still a distance of 30 meters between the two sides, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up. The large black sword trembled violently, and a sword cry resounded through the horizon. And in front of them, a Dao soldier from Kuraki Academy suddenly leaped into the air on a flaming horse, charging towards Yi Xian. In his hand was a black spear. Yi Xian's sword descended. The Dao soldier stabbed out with his spear. Boom! As soon as the spear and sword came into contact, there was a thunderous explosion. The spear and sword trembled violently. In the blink of an eye, the Dao soldier fell from the sky along with his horse. However, Yi Xian's sword did not stop. Instead, it slashed down in a straight line. If the sword fell, it could split the ground. At that moment, a Dao soldier suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, thrusting his spear out like a bolt of lightning. Boom! Yi Xian was forcibly blocked by this spear. But at this moment, an afterimage suddenly crashed into the Dao soldier, and the latter was instantly sent flying. It was Lu Banzwang. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian. To be the big brother, you have to fight at least 5 people. 5. Yi Xian grinned. You call me big brother too? Lu Banzwang raised a finger. Fight 10 of them. Huh, Yi Xian suddenly threw his head back and laughed maniacally. Then, he laughed and said, then fight 10 of them. As soon as he said that, he suddenly charged out. In an instant, battle will and sword essence swept out from his body. When the battle will and sword essence appeared, they instantly merged. In an instant, the big black sword in Yi Xian's hand trembled violently and a dazzling sword radiance burst out. Yi Xian leaped and slashed at a group of Kuraki College Dao soldiers not far away. One slash to determine life and death. This slash not only contained battle will and sword essence, but also the power of earth. Not far away, the 7 or 8 Dao soldiers all turned pale when they saw Yi Xian's sword attack. The 8 of them suddenly gathered together and stood in a row. Then, the 8 of them thrust their spears at the same time, one after another. In the end, the power of each thrust gathered into the long spear of the leading soldier like a tide. The 8 of them worked together. The power of the spear instantly shattered the air within a radius of hundreds of feet. At that moment, Yi Xian's sword arrived and slashed at the spear. Boom! The leading spear instantly shattered while the 8 of them retreated hundreds of feet away. When the 8 of them stopped, a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of their mouths. As for Yi Xian, he returned to his original position. There was still a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. 1 against 8. In the distance, Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian. His expression was calm and there was no ripple in his eyes. However, his heart was in turmoil. Every Dao soldier from Kuraki College was the elite among the elites. They were all picked out from tens of thousands of miles. However, Yi Xian could actually fight 1 against 8. What kind of monstrous genius was this? Making an enemy out of Kuraki College was definitely the most unwise decision they had made in the past 100 years. However, at this point, there was no turning back. Bow down to Yi Xian and his disciple. Kuraki College had already lost so many experts. How could they bow down now? If they bowed down, Kuraki College's prestige would definitely fall to the lowest point. They couldn't lower their heads. Fight! Mu Qingxian slowly closed his eyes. Then, he lightly tapped his right index finger. In the distance, several ghostly shadows quietly appeared in the midst of the battle. Almost at the same time, Lu Banzwang suddenly appeared in front of those ghostly shadows. Her right hand turned into a palm and slammed it down on the ground. Boom! In an instant, the ground cracked. A powerful force instantly forced those ghostly shadows to retreat. Meanwhile, Yi Li and the others approached Lu Banzwang and Yi Xian. Assassins! Yi Li and the others were on guard. They weren't really afraid of the Dao soldiers. However, these assassins were really annoying because they appeared and disappeared mysteriously. If they weren't careful, they could lose their heads. Beside Lu Banzwang, Ling Han wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said in a low voice, "Those people shouldn't be Dao soldiers from the Dark Realm. The Dao soldiers from the Dark Realm either haven't arrived yet or are waiting in the dark." Yi Xian turned to Lu Banzwang. "Follow them and block those assassins. I'll do the main thing." After saying so, he raised the large black sword and charged towards the Dao soldiers from Kuraki Academy. Beside Lu Banzwang, Ling Han said in a low voice, "Big sister, go and help Brother Yi. We'll be careful ourselves." Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian, who wasn't far away. She was just about to make a move when Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Chi, chi. 2 flashes of sword light shot out like 2 balls of lightning. In front of Yi Xian, the 2 Dao soldiers from Kuraki Academy were instantly sent flying several dozen meters away. They had just stopped when Yi Xian raised the large black sword and slashed down above their heads. However, it was at this moment that 5 or 6 Dao soldiers suddenly appeared in front of him. Immediately after, 5 spears stabbed out at the same time, each spear aimed directly at Yi Xian's vital points. However, Yi Xian didn't dodge, and allowed the 5 spears to stab at his vital points. However, none of the 5 spears pierced into Yi Xian's body. Armor of Earth. At this moment, Yi Xian's clothes were covered with a layer of golden soft armor, and this layer of golden soft armor blocked the spears. When they discovered that the spears were blocked, the expressions of the 5 Dao soldiers changed drastically. The next moment, a flying sword instantly sliced off the head of one of the Dao soldiers. Blood spurted out. The other 4 Dao soldiers instantly retreated several dozen meters. The 4 of them looked at Yi Xian, their expressions filled with fear. Yi Xian stood where he was, expressionless. Actually, the golden soft armor under his clothes was already severely deformed, and his body was also damaged. With his current strength, he could at most use 30% of the power of the Dao Law. However, this 30% power was not enough for his armor of the Great Earth to completely withstand the full force attack of the God Unity stage experts. Moreover, it was the full force attack of 5 people. It was already very abnormal for his armor of the Great Earth to be able to withstand the majority of the attack. In the distance, the expressions of those Dao soldiers were extremely grave because they hadn't thought that Yi Xian would actually be able to block the full attack of the 5 of them. Furthermore, he had even killed one of them. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from where he was. The expressions of those Dao soldiers changed slightly, but they didn't retreat. Instead, they charged towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian had already put away the large black sword, and in his hand was the spirit elegant sword. The large black sword was powerful enough, but it wasn't agile enough. With the spirit elegant sword in hand, Yi Xian's whole person became agile. He continuously shuttled back and forth between those 6 or 7 Dao soldiers, and waves of sword light shot out. For a moment, he and that group of Dao soldiers couldn't do anything to each other. And on the other side, Lu Banzwang and the others also began to battle with the remaining Dao soldiers. Lu Banzwang didn't make a move, and was instead guarding against those assassins in the dark. Apart from Yi Xian, only she could block those assassins from the dark realm. Thus, she couldn't make a move. She had to stop those assassins. Otherwise, Ling Han and the others would be in great danger. On the battlefield, 12 people were battling 19 people. For a moment, it actually became a stalemate. And on the other side, in the midst of an endless mountain range, a group of eagles flew over the mountain range. Each eagle was at least 30 meters wide. These eagles were all in the ethereal opening tier. The eagle in the lead was even larger, at least 60 meters long. Its eyes were as sharp as knives, and when it flapped its wings, it would bring about an extremely powerful airflow. On the back of the eagle stood a coarse man. The man wasn't old, only about 20 years old, but he had a full beard. The coarse man suddenly turned around and roared angrily, "Did you not eat? All of you, King, hurry up." After saying this, he turned around and looked into the distance. In a fierce voice, he said, "Kuraki Academy, Dark Realm, if anything happens to my sister, Lu Kuang, will destroy you all." In the midst of a mountain range, a man rode a giant wolf. The giant wolf was very large, at least twice the size of an ordinary cow. At this moment, the giant wolf was running wildly through the mountain range. Everywhere it passed, it crushed everything. The rugged mountain path was like flat ground to it. On the back of the wolf, the man glared at the end and said angrily, "Ck, Ling Han, you're trash. You can't even win a fight. You're a disgrace to our Ling clan. If I see you again, I'll beat you to death." On the surface of a river, a girl in green was crossing the vast river surface as if she was walking on flat ground. The girl in green raised her head and looked into the distance. An evil smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Baby Lu, this time you'll have to listen to me. Otherwise, the monsters on the monster list will pay at least 100 million gold coins each time they make a move, hee." On the other side, Yi Xian and the others were still fighting. Not far away, Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian and the others for a long time. In the end, he suddenly raised his right hand and then lightly dropped it. On the side, the 1,000 Tang Empire's heavy cavalry suddenly rushed towards Yi Xian and the others. At the same time, more than 30 divine combination realm experts appeared in the surroundings. Apart from that, there were also some ghostly figures around Yi Xian and the others. At this moment, a loud laughter suddenly came from the other side. "Who is Yi Xian?" "I, Wu Yi, am here to borrow your head." Wu Yi. Third on the martial roll. Mu Qingxian smiled. Apart from that, some people suddenly rushed over from all directions. These people were all here for the bounty. Before, they didn't dare to make a move. Now that they saw Kuraki Academy start an all-out attack, they naturally didn't have any scruples and attacked one after another. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression instantly turned ferocious. He suddenly turned to Lu Banzwang and the others. "Protect me for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, I'll be invincible." As his voice fell, he suddenly took out the big black sword. The next moment, he suddenly stabbed the big black sword into his body. Hong! In an instant, the big black sword directly turned into an endless amount of energy that surged into his body. At this moment, his aura skyrocketed. Not only his aura, but even the spirit elegant sword also trembled violently at this moment. The aura it emitted also rose steadily. "Protect Brother Yi." Ling Han roared angrily. Soon, the 11 of them surrounded Yi Xian. Chapter 138. In the middle of Ling Han and the others, Yi Xian's aura skyrocketed. Inside his body, the spirit elegant sword was also trembling violently, crazily devouring the energy from the big black sword. Devouring the big black sword. At this moment, Yi Xian undoubtedly didn't care about anything else. He couldn't care so much. He had to break through himself now. Because the higher sky realm was really not enough. He had to reach the nether passage tier. At this moment, everyone discovered that Yi Xian was only in the higher sky realm. The higher sky realm already had the strength to kill a divine unity tier elite, so what if he reached the nether passage tier? The more they thought about it, the more terrifying it was. Not far away, Mu Qingxian obviously also realized the seriousness of the matter, and his originally calm expression became serious at this moment. Higher Sky Realm. If Yi Xian reached the nether passage tier, thinking up to this point, Mu Qingxuan's pupils shrank slightly, and he suddenly turned his head to the right not far away. If you can kill him, an additional 100 million gold coins and 500,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. There was no movement. Seeing this scene, Mu Qingxuan's expression instantly darkened. In the distance, Lu Banzwang and the others firmly surrounded Yi Xian. In front of them was 1,000 Tang Empire's heavy cavalry. 1,000 heavy cavalry galloped over, and the earth was already shaking. Aside from this 1,000 Tang Empire's heavy cavalry, there were also 19 Kuraki Academy's Dao soldiers. In the surroundings, there were still assassins from the Dark Realm. Aside from them, there was also Wu Yi, who was ranked 3rd on the martial roll. From the lineup, Yi Xian's side didn't have any advantage. However, Lu Banzwang and the other 11 people didn't retreat. The 12 people firmly guarded beside Yi Xian, not retreating an inch. Lu Banzwang, who was in the lead, suddenly took a step forward. She took out a large flatbread, took a bite, and then hit it again. Everyone, at this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly squatted on the ground, her right hand lightly touching the ground. At this moment, her entire person suddenly became quiet. After a moment of silence, she suddenly raised her head and pressed her right hand down. Earth collapse. Her voice fell. Boom. The ground in an area of 300 m suddenly trembled violently. In the blink of an eye, the ground in front of Lu Banzwang cracked apart. At the same time, a powerful force capable of obliterating the heavens and the earth swept out from within the cracked ground. The 100-plus cavalrymen in the lead were shaken to a halt by this force, and some of the cavalrymen at the front were even torn apart while blood sprayed all over the ground. But that was not the end. Lu Banzwang suddenly leaped up and arrived directly above the heavy cavalry. In the next moment, her body suddenly flipped in the air. After a moment of silence, she suddenly fell from the sky and landed in the middle of the heavy cavalry. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly rang out from within the group of heavy cavalry. Then, countless heavy cavalry flew out in all directions. In the distance, Mu Qingxian looked coldly at Lu Banzwang, and then he looked at Yi Xian. Kill this person first. Kill Yi Xian. The Dao soldiers of Kuraki Academy charged directly towards Yi Xian's location. Apart from them, there were also some ghostly shadows and some elites who had rushed over. Ling Han took a step forward. His right hand gripped the long spear tightly. He stared fixedly at the Dao soldiers that were charging at him, and grinned viciously. Brothers, if we die in battle today, remember to continue to be brothers in our next life. No one will be left behind. After saying that, he suddenly stomped his right foot and soared into the sky. In the air, his aura suddenly soared. Then, he swooped down with the long spear in his hand. Around the long spear, there was a dazzling spear ray and spear intent. Wherever the spear passed, the air was instantly torn and shattered, and the sound of air exploding continuously rang out. Below, Yi Li's body suddenly became illusory. In the next moment, the ground under his feet suddenly cracked. Then, he turned into an afterimage and charged out, the rest of the people also rushed out. 10 people against 19 Dao soldiers, 1,000 heavy cavalry, and those ghostly assassins. How could they resist? The moment the battle started, Ling Han and the others were directly crushed. Lu Banzwang wanted to return to defend, but he was firmly trapped by the heavy cavalry. Peng! A man suddenly fell in front of Yi Xian. The man lay on the ground, and blood flowed continuously from his mouth. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, then placed a storage ring in front of Yi Xian. Brother Yi, I'm Wang Ming. This is all my savings. Help me bring them to my mother. Your son is unfilial and can't fulfill his filial duties. As he finished speaking, he suddenly stood up. In the next moment, he charged into the distance like a madman. However, before he could take a few steps, a long spear suddenly pierced through his chest. Wang Ming's body stiffened, and he stared blankly at the distant horizon. Soon, there was no color in his eyes. The Dao soldier pulled out his spear and charged directly at Yi Xian. However, when he was still a few meters away from Yi Xian, a man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The man charged forward, and at this moment, the Dao soldier raised his spear and stabbed. The man did not dodge, and allowed the soldier's spear to pierce into his abdomen. Not only that, but he also charged forward, allowing the spear to pierce through his entire body, and the dagger in his hand stabbed straight into the Dao soldier's throat. Chi! Blood splattered from the two of them. The man retreated in front of Yi Xian. On his hand, a storage ring suddenly fell off and slowly fell in front of Yi Xian. Li Feng. As his voice fell, his eyes slowly closed. And at this moment, a figure crashed in front of Yi Xian. This person was Ling Han. At this moment, his whole body was covered in wounds, especially his right hand, which had already split open countless times. He could barely even hold his spear. Ling Han's back was facing Yi Xian. He raised his head and looked at the 6 or 7 Dao soldiers that were charging towards him from afar. Brother Yi, the brothers have really tried their best. As his voice fell, the storage ring on his finger suddenly fell in front of Yi Xian. Immediately after, a sinister smile appeared at the corners of his lips, and he was about to charge towards those Dao soldiers. And at this moment, a hand suddenly pressed down on his shoulder. Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian slowly walked towards those 5 or 6 Dao soldiers in the distance. When he walked in front of Li Feng's corpse, he paused slightly, and at this moment, those 5 or 6 Dao soldiers had already charged to a distance of several meters in front of him. Yi Xian faced those Dao soldiers. At this moment, his cheeks were already covered in tears. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head and roared like a wild beast, "Kill!" Wang! The sound of a sword rang out, and immediately after, a sword suddenly flew out from his body. Several meters away, a Dao soldier did not even have time to react, and his head was directly cut off. Seeing this scene, Mu Qingshuan's expression instantly changed. Peak stage of ethereal opening tier. True grade sword. And at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from where he was, and the next moment, another Dao soldier in front of him was sent flying. Instant kill. It was a direct instant kill. The expressions of the remaining 2 Dao soldiers changed, and at this moment, a sword slashed towards them. One of the Dao soldiers hurriedly raised his spear and stabbed. This stab directly stabbed the tip of the spirit and elegant sword, but the moment the two came into contact, the long spear was instantly split into 2, and was as brittle as tofu. Sword light flashed. One after another, heads instantly flew out, and blood spurted out like a pillar. In an instant, the few Dao soldiers in front of Yi Xian were completely killed. And Yi Xian did not stop, and instead directly charged to the other side. Then, a strange scene unfolded. Wherever Yi Xian went, he basically killed all of them in an instant. Every single strike of his was an instant kill, and no one could stop a single strike from Yi Xian. After Yi Xian joined the battle, the situation was instantly reversed. Nearby, Mu Qingxian stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and his face was slightly pale. Yi Xian is only at the peak stage of the ethereal opening realm, but he can already instantly kill the Dao soldiers of Kuraki Academy. What if he attains the divine combination realm? When he thought up to here, Mu Qingxuan's expression instantly became slightly ferocious. He opened his right hand, and a letter suddenly burst into flames. In next to no time, a flame suddenly appeared in the distant horizon. A signal. Mu Qingxian slowly closed his eyes. This person must die. In the distance, Yi Xian was still slaughtering madly. He had gone berserk, and everywhere he passed, heads flew into the air. No one could stop his sword. After he devoured the black sword, he could easily instantly kill a nether passage realm expert without using the energy of the earth. He was strong, and so was his sword. In a short period of time, only a few of the soldiers around Yi Xian had been killed, and the remaining soldiers and experts from all over Qingzhou were also retreating. They were simply unstoppable. Right now, Yi Xian was killing whoever he saw. However, none of the Dao soldiers retreated. Even though 5 or 6 of them had been killed by Yi Xian, none of the Dao soldiers retreated. Every single one of them was fighting to the death. Only 4 or 5 of the Dao soldiers were left. Retreat. Not far away, Mu Qingxian suddenly shouted angrily. However, the group of Dao soldiers still did not retreat. Not only did 5 Dao soldiers not retreat, but they also charged at Yi Xian. Seeing this, Mu Qingxian was instantly furious. Fool! Not far away, a Dao soldier turned his head and glanced at Mu Qingxian. We swear to protect the dignity of Kuraki Academy with our lives. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and charged at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. At the same time, a strand of light flashed. In the next moment, the head of a Dao soldier that was over 10 m away flew into the air. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. Yi Xian suddenly appeared behind that Dao soldier. He stretched out his left hand, and the Spirit Beauty sword fell firmly into his grasp. Meanwhile, 4 Dao soldiers had charged over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian didn't draw his sword, and he suddenly opened his eyes instead. Hiss! Hiss! 2 rays of light pierced through the center of the brows of 2 Dao soldiers. It was fast. These 2 streaks of sword light were simply too fast. Coupled with the fact that they were so close to each other, they weren't able to react at all before they were instantly killed. At the moment when the 2 rays of light pierced through the center of the brows of 2 Dao soldiers, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Hiss! Hiss! The bodies of the remaining 2 Dao soldiers suddenly stiffened on the spot, and very quickly, their heads fell off their necks. At this moment, there were a few bloody holes all over Yi Xian's body, especially his left shoulder, which had been pierced by a spear. Yi Xian turned around and walked over to Ling Han. Ling Han held the spear tightly with both hands, and his head was leaning against the body of the spear. He was no longer breathing. Yi Xian suddenly knelt down, and his head continuously hit the ground as he bawled like a child. P.S. Chapter 4, Surprise? Surprise? Chapter 139. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's ears, "Brother Yi. I'm not dead yet." Hearing this voice, Yi Xian's body trembled slightly, and the next moment, he suddenly looked up. At this moment, Ling Han was looking down at him. Although blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth, he was indeed not dead, and was still smiling. Yi Xian was stunned, then stood up and hugged Ling Han. Around them, Yi Li and the others who were still alive also ran over and hugged him tightly. Beside them, Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian and the others, then sat on the ground, took out a large flatbread, and began to nibble slowly. As he nibbled, the flatbread had already turned red. Tragic. This battle was extremely tragic for both sides. Nearly 100 of the Tang Empire's heavy cavalry died, and dozens of the surrounding martial artists from all over Qingzhou also died. Among them, the Tao soldiers of Kuraki Academy were completely annihilated. And Yi Xian and the others were also tragic. Li Feng and Wang Ming died in battle, and the others were also seriously injured, especially Ling Han and Yi Li, who were not only seriously injured, but also half dead. The two of them had completely lost the ability to fight, and not only them, the others could also be said to have no ability to fight. And around them, the Tang Empire's soldiers had not retreated yet. After a moment, Yi Xian walked in front of Li Feng and Wang Ming. Looking at the two corpses, Yi Xian and the others were silent. Yi Xian stood in front of Li Feng and Wang Ming for a long time, and finally, he placed his right hand on Li Feng's shoulder. Come, in the next life, continue to be brothers. In the next life, be brothers. After Yi Xian placed the two corpses, he turned to Ling Han and the others, recuperate. Ling Han and the others sat down cross-legged, and each of them took a golden sore pill. Yi Xian turned around and walked in front of Lu Banzwang, who was sitting on the ground. Her hands were already a bloody mess. Yi Xian squatted down. Sorry, I couldn't protect them. Lu Banzwang turned her head and looked into the distance. After a while, she shook her head. We're all prepared to die. At this point, she suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. Protect the people who are still alive, because they call you Big Brother now. Big Brother. At the corners of Yi Xian's eyes, two streams of clear liquid slowly flowed out. Lu Banzwang patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly. They're willing to die for you, which proves that they won't regret it. They don't want you to feel guilty, and you shouldn't feel guilty. What you need to do now is to avenge them. Revenge. Yi Xian stood up and turned to face Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian with a calm expression. Yi Xian grinned. If your Kuraki Academy wants to play, then I, Yi Xian, will play with you until the end. In this lifetime, if I don't die, then your Kuraki Academy will die. Mu Qingxian said indifferently, we have been like this since a long time ago. As he spoke, he raised his right hand and waved it lightly. Rumble. A group of cavalry suddenly appeared in the distance. There were about 3,000 of them. Tang Empire's heavy cavalry. In addition, there were thousands of Tang Empire's infantrymen. Imperial Army. This time, almost all the elites of Tang Empire's Imperial Palace had come out. This was truly a desperate gamble. In addition, 40 people suddenly appeared behind Mu Qingxian. These 40 people were all in the divine combination realm. In addition, there were also some assassins in the dark. These assassins were the most terrifying because no one knew when they would make a move. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly pointed at Wu Yi. He just sneak attacked Wang Ming. Hearing this, Yi Xian looked at Wu Yi, who was ranked third on the martial roll. The latter narrowed his eyes and slowly clenched his fists. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. The moment Yi Xian disappeared, Wu Ye's pupils suddenly shrank. In the next moment, he clenched his right hand into a fist. He half-squatted and retracted his right hand. Then, he suddenly blasted forward and shouted angrily, Yuan Qi collapse. With a punch, an energy fist mark accompanied by a terrifying aura shook out of his hand. The powerful fist mark and aura instantly shattered the surrounding air, and the area directly became a vacuum. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly leaped and slashed down with a sword light. One sword to decide life and death. With a swing of the sword, the energy fist print instantly crumbled. Immediately after, a figure landed behind Wu Yi. It was Yi Xian. Wu Ye's body stiffened. After a moment of silence, his eyebrows suddenly split open and blood gushed out. Instant kill. At this moment, his one sword to decide life and death was much stronger than the previous one sword to decide life and death. Or it should be said that it couldn't be compared at all. After he instantly killed Wu Yi, Yi Xian turned around and faced Mu Qingxuan's side. A figure had silently appeared by Mu Qingxuan's side. The mistress of the dark dimension of Pine Prefecture. one of the top experts of Pine Prefecture. The mistress of the dark dimension suddenly said, "Aren't you going to begin? Wait for them to recover?" Mu Qingxian said indifferently, "All the Dao soldiers of my Kuraki Academy have perished." What? Isn't that enough? Even though his voice was calm, it carried a strand of rage. Because both sides had agreed that the Dao soldiers of the Dark Dimension would attack once the Dao soldiers of Kuraki Academy were born. However, the Dark Dimension had only sent a few assassins, and these assassins weren't Dao soldiers of the Central Divine Prefecture's Dark Dimension. Up until now, the Dao soldiers of the Dark Dimension hadn't appeared. The mistress of the Dark Dimension fell silent for a moment, and then she said, "I'm slightly late." Mu Qingxian shook his head and smiled. "Late? Mistress of the Dark Dimension, are you a fucking pig?" The temperature in the surroundings instantly cooled down. Mu Qingxian stared fixedly at the mistress of the Dark Dimension, and then he pointed at Yi Xian. "Do you see that? He's already at the ethereal opening realm, and ordinary ethereal opening realm experts are utterly unable to resist a single strike of his sword. This is the consequence of all of you trying to play petty tricks. My Kuraki Academy risked our lives to fight him, yet all of you schemed against him from behind. Are all of you fucking pigs from the Dark Dimension?" He was furious. Mu Qingxian was undoubtedly extremely furious. If the Dao soldiers of the Dark Dimension and Kuraki Academy had attacked together, then they would have had a very good chance of killing Yi Xian and the others. But the Dark Dimension didn't. They just watched as the Dao soldiers of Kuraki Academy were completely annihilated. The mistress of the Dark Dimension hadn't spoken when Mu Qingxian laughed coldly and said, Right. Your Dark Dimension wanted to use the Dao soldiers of my Kuraki Academy to exhaust Yi Xian and the others, and then your Dark Dimension would attack and take advantage of the situation. Now, you've achieved your objective. However, my Kuraki Academy isn't playing around anymore. Yi Xian doesn't have to die. Leave him and this group of people to continue growing. I hope your Dark Dimension will be able to eliminate them in the future." As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Qingxian turned around and left. Right at this moment, the mistress of the Dark Dimension suddenly said, "Brother Mu, don't be rash. This is my Dark Dimension's fault. Brother Mu, please think of the big picture." Mu Qingxian stopped and sneered, "Think of the big picture? Mistress of the Dark Dimension, this Yi Xian is a monster to begin with, and you keep giving him chances. Do you know what your Dark Dimension and my Kuraki Academy will face in the future if he doesn't die today?" The mistress of the Dark Dimension nodded slightly. "Brother Mu, how about this? From now on, neither of us will hold back. If we kill this Yi Xian and the others, your Kuraki Academy will take 70% of their belongings. How about that?" Mu Qingxian looked coldly at the mistress of the Dark Dimension and didn't speak. Obviously, he had already agreed. The mistress of the Dark Dimension said, "Then we can begin." The Dao soldiers of the Dark Dimension were naturally assassins, and assassins definitely couldn't fight head-on because that would greatly reduce their battle prowess. Mu Qingxian raised his head and looked at Yi Xian and the others who weren't far away. Yi Xian held the Spirit Elegant sword and stood in front of them. He just stood there, and his entire person was like a sword, revealing its sharpness. Mu Qingxuan's expression gradually became somewhat ferocious. "Kill." As his voice fell, the several thousand heavy cavalry of the Tang Empire suddenly charged. Several thousand cavalry charging together, how terrifying was that? The entire earth was already trembling at this moment. And on both sides of these several thousand heavy cavalry, there were also 3,000 Imperial Guards. The 40 or so divine combination tier elites behind Mu Qingxian suddenly disappeared on the spot, heading straight for Yi Xian and the others. Aside from them, there was still a group of assassins from the Dark Dimension that hadn't appeared yet. Desperate situation. A true desperate situation. This time, Kuraki Academy and the Dark Dimension could be said to have mobilized all the elites that they could currently mobilize. In terms of lineup, Kuraki Academy and the Dark Dimension could be said to have an absolute advantage. Even so, Mu Qingshuan's expression was still grave, and he wasn't confident in his heart. Because Yi Xian and the others had given him too many surprises. In the distance, Yi Xian held the Spirit Elegant Sword and blocked in front of Ling Han and the others. The Spirit Elegant Sword in his hand trembled continuously, and at the same time, his body was exuding a towering battle intent. Battle intent. Battle. At this moment, there was no other thought in Yi Xian's mind. There was only battle. Actually, with his current strength, it was very possible for him to fight his way out. However, he didn't have the slightest thought of escaping. Because Ling Han and the others were right behind him. He was already prepared to die in battle. If he could survive, then it would naturally be best for his brothers to live together and venture together. But if he couldn't survive, then his brothers would die in battle together. Lu Banzwang suddenly stood beside Yi Xian. She looked at the people charging over from afar, expressionless. Furthermore, she took out a large flatbread and was munching on it. Yi Xian suddenly said, "I know a person. She's like you, likes to eat, and eats all the time." Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian continued, "I feel that if you two were together, it would definitely be very fun." Ji Anji and Lu Banzwang together. Thinking of this scene, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. If that was really the case, then it would definitely be very fun. One person holding a bun, the other holding a flatbread. Lu Banzwang put away the flatbread and looked into the distance. This might be the last battle. Yi Xian nodded. "Nice to meet you guys." Lu Banzwang said softly, "In our next life, we'll continue to be brothers." Yi Xian laughed. "Alright, in our next life, we'll continue to be brothers." After saying this, he was about to rush out, but at this moment, the ground suddenly trembled violently. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. Everyone looked to the right, and at the end of their line of sight, a black mass suddenly appeared. Soon, that black mass was getting closer and closer to everyone. Demonic beasts. It was a group of demonic beasts, and there were all kinds of demonic beasts. There were as many as 10,000 of them. And on the back of the giant tiger in the lead sat a person. This person was Bai Zai. Bai Zai. Bai Zai rode on the giant tiger. He looked at where Yi Xian was and roared angrily, "Bandit Yi, I'm here." "Me too." Not far from Bai Zai, there was another giant tiger with a man sitting on it. It was Imo Yinchi. These two guys. Yi Xian was stunned. Chapter 140. They're here. As soon as Lu Banzwang's voice fell, a group of eagles appeared on the horizon. The 9th mercenary group. The Tang Empire's soldiers stopped. 3,000 cavalrymen and thousands of Tang elites turned around and prepared for battle. At this moment, they were even more afraid of Bai Zai and Imo Yinchi, who were charging over with a horde of demonic beasts. Bai Zai suddenly roared, "Bandit Yi, what are we going to do?" Yi Xian raised his head and looked at Bai Zai, "Kill. Leave no one alive. Leave no one alive." Bai Zai roared, "Kill, leave no one alive." As soon as he said that, the speed of the demonic beasts suddenly increased. At this moment, the earth trembled violently. In front of the thousands of cavalrymen, a cavalry general suddenly raised his sword, "Charge! Charge!" As soon as his voice fell, thousands of heavy cavalry suddenly charged out in unison. In addition, thousands of Tang Empire's elite soldiers also charged out. At this moment, a group of eagles suddenly appeared in the sky above them. Then, about 20 people jumped down from the sky. The rugged man in the lead quickly walked up to Lu Banzwang. When he saw Lu Banzwang's appearance, his expression instantly turned ferocious. "Who the F***ck did this?" Lu Banzwang glanced at the rugged man but did not speak. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly pointed at the group of divine combination realm experts in the distance who had already stopped. The boorish man suddenly turned towards the group of god fusion realm experts. He opened his right hand and a heavy saber appeared in his palm. In the next instant, he charged towards the group of God Fusion Realm experts with the heavy saber. Leave no one alive. Leave no one alive. The group of people behind the rugged man also charged out. Yi Xian was about to attack when Lu Banzwang suddenly shook his head. No need. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. At this moment, a mournful scream came from not far away. Yi Xian turned around and was stunned when he sensed the situation in the distance. This was because the 40 over divine combination realm experts were instantly defeated the moment they clashed with the rugged man's group. Crushed. Truly crushed. Although they were all divine combination realm experts and Kuraki College had more people, they were no match for the rugged man and his group. The gap between them was just too big. It could be said that the boorish man and the others were much stronger than the Dao soldiers sent by Kuraki Academy. On the other side, Mu Qingxuan's expression was extremely ugly. He suddenly turned to look at the mistress of the world and roared, "Still not attacking? Attack!" After a moment of silence, the mistress of the world suddenly shook her head. "It's already over. Let's go." As soon as his voice faded, he directly disappeared. Following which, the Dark World assassins that were hidden in the surroundings also disappeared along with him. Seeing the mistress of the Dark World and the rest leave, Mu Xuanqing's expression was savage to the extreme. In the distance, the group of God Fusion Realm experts wanted to escape, but they discovered that they couldn't escape at all. The 20 people they were facing were much faster than them. Even so, they still chose to escape. They no longer had the confidence to fight. At this moment, the rough man not far away suddenly said angrily, "Don't let a single one of them go. Don't let a single one of them go." The group of divine combination realm experts who wanted to escape fell one after another. On the other side, the experts from all over Qing province who were about to attack didn't hesitate to turn around and flee when they saw this scene. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Eat! The exquisite sword was like a bolt of lightning that flashed through the battlefield, and everywhere the exquisite sword passed, it left behind a trail of blood. Instant kill. Not a single one of them could resist a single strike from Yi Xian. For a time, wails and shrill cries resounded incessantly. In less than 20 breaths of time, there were already over 30 corpses around Yi Xian. In Yi Xian's hand, a smear of fresh blood slowly dripped from the exquisite sword. At this moment, the 9th mercenary group's battle had ended as well, and there were also over 40 corpses beneath their feet. Not a single one was left. All of them had been completely annihilated. Yi Xian raised his head to look at Bai Zhe and Mo Yinqi. At this moment, the group of demon beasts that Bai Zhe brought with him were in an intense battle with the Tang Empire's heavy cavalry, and both sides could be said to be evenly matched. After all, these heavy cavalry and infantry were the elites amongst the elites of the Tang Empire. Yi Xian walked towards the group of Tang soldiers with his sword in hand. At this moment, an old man appeared before Yi Xian. It was the elder of the Tang Empire. The elder gazed at Yi Xian and said, "My Tang Empire has retreated. This matter ends here." Retreat. At this moment, the Tang Empire understood clearly that after the defeat of Kuraki Gakkai and the others, the Tang Empire had no advantage at all. Because Yi Xian had such a group of friends in the Central Plains, and these people were extraordinarily terrifying. Coupled with the military strength of the Jiang Empire, it could be said that only the Ning Empire could go against them. Coupled with the appearance of demon beasts within the Tang Empire, and there were so many of them. This battle couldn't be fought. It couldn't be fought. Yi Xian walked over to the elder with his sword in hand and said, "Do you think it'll end just because you want it to?" "Sorry, I don't want it to end." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot with his sword in hand. In the distance, a ray of green light suddenly entered the group of heavy cavalry, and in an instant, 6 of them were instantly killed. The elder's face was extremely gloomy when he witnessed this scene, and no one knew what he was thinking. On the other side, the rugged man and the others arrived in front of Lu Banzwang. The rugged man was about to speak when Lu Banzwang had already charged towards the heavy cavalry in the distance. The rugged man was stunned, and then he raised his saber and charged towards the group of soldiers as well. When Lu Banzwang and the others joined the battle instantly became one-sided. It was a slaughter. Yi Xian and the others were geniuses amongst geniuses, so how could these soldiers stop them? All of them could fight a few dozen enemies by themselves. Most importantly, they could accurately kill the commanders of the cavalry and elite infantrymen. Just like that, it didn't take long for the number of heavy cavalry and soldiers to dwindle. Retreat. The elder's voice suddenly resounded. Only then did the soldiers of the Tang Empire start to retreat, and their retreat made them even weaker. Thus, even more of them died. The elder clenched his fists tightly as he stared fixedly at Yi Xian, who stood amidst the crowd, and his eyes were filled with undisguised killing intent. He really wanted to attack. If he attacked, he would be able to stop Yi Xian and the others. No matter how monstrous Yi Xian and the others were, they weren't monstrous to the point of being able to go against a myriad law realm expert. However, he didn't dare to attack. Because once he did, the entire Tang Empire might perish. A sword immortal could really destroy a small country with ease. Around a quarter of an hour later, Yi Xian and the others stopped. The ground around them was covered in severed limbs and corpses, and blood had already dyed the ground red. Slaughter. Yi Xian turned to look at the nearby elder. Did it look good? The elder stared fixedly at Yi Xian. You're a martial artist, and they're soldiers. Are you proud of slaughtering soldiers as a martial artist? Yi Xian shook his head. I'm a martial artist, but I'm also a citizen of the state of Jiang. I only know that if you soldiers enter the state of Jiang, countless citizens of the state of Jiang will become like them. War was very cruel. One could imagine what would happen to the state of Jiang if the Tang Empire's soldiers entered the state of Jiang. The elder took a deep look at Yi Xian, then turned around and disappeared. Yi Xian walked in front of Bai Zai and Mo Yinqi. The two of them glanced at Yi Xian. Finally, Bai Zai said in a deep voice, I went back to Mount Mang, so I'm late. Yi Xian shook his head. You're not late. However, how did you demon beasts come to the Tang Empire? Bai Zai explained, there are borders between countries, but there are no borders for demon beasts. We can cross the steepest mountains, and that's how we came here. Yi Xian nodded, then turned around and walked in front of the boorish man. The boorish man and the others were also looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, thank you. The boorish man said indifferently, what are you thanking me for? We're not here to help you. With that, he turned to look at Lu Banzwang. Banzwang, come home with me. Lu Banzwang said indifferently, I'm not going back. The boorish man sighed in a low voice. Your anger should have subsided by now. Really, Dad's temper has become irritable recently, and he often sits alone in the courtyard in silence. He must be regretting it. Come home with me. Lu Banzwang looked at Yi Xian. I'm already a member of the bandit mercenary group. Bandit mercenary group? The boorish man frowned slightly. What bandit mercenary group? As he spoke, he turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, I've just established a mercenary group, and I'm the big brother. Big brother. Hearing this, the people behind the boorish man suddenly laughed loudly. At this moment, Ling Han and the others arrived behind Yi Xian. The boorish man sized up Yi Xian. You're a blind man, and you're my sister's big brother? You. Yi Xian suddenly pointed his sword at the boorish man. Cut the crap. Come, let's fight first. Let's fight first. The boorish man glanced at Yi Xian, smiled, and said, You've got guts. If you're to my liking, then let's fight. As he said this, he suddenly slashed at Yi Xian with his heavy saber. Peak stage of the divine combination tier. Moreover, he was a saber grandmaster. Yi Xian didn't waste any words, and raised his sword to stab. One strike to decide life and death. In the instant that Yi Xian struck, the smiles of the people behind the boorish man instantly froze. A sword grandmaster. A sword grandmaster who wasn't even 20 years old was rare, even in the entire central divine continent. The saber and the sword clashed. Boom! Yi Xian and the boorish man both retreated rapidly, and with every step they took, the ground would tremble violently and then crack. At this moment, Yi Xian and the boorish man stopped at the same time. The boorish man glanced at the big saber in his hand. His big saber was already full of cracks, and not only that, but his entire arm was also cracked. The boorish man looked up at Yi Xian. Sword and body dual cultivation. Yi Xian suddenly clenched his left hand, and in an instant, a wave of battle intent swept out. Battle intent. Martial Dao Grandmaster. The boorish man narrowed his eyes. Martial, body, and sword triple cultivation. Yi Xian nodded, and he walked in front of the boorish man. Yi Xian, let's be friends. The boorish man looked at Yi Xian for a long time, and finally, he said, Lu Kuang. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth lifted slightly. Interested in doing something big? Lu Kuang asked, tell me about it. Yi Xian turned and looked into the distance. Let's go to the Tang Imperial Palace and borrow some money from the Emperor. Lu Kuang glanced at Yi Xian. The kind that doesn't need to be returned? Yi Xian said with a straight face, I'm not that kind of person. At the side, Mo Yinchi directly vomited. Chapter 141. In a dense forest, Yi Xian and the others stood quietly. In front of them were two small graves. In the two graves were Li Feng and Wang Ming. According to their rules, they were buried where they died. Yi Xian stood in front of the two graves for a long time. Finally, he said softly, we'll continue to be brothers in the next life. After saying that, he turned and left. Lu Banzwang walked to the two graves, squatted down, and placed two large pancakes in front of them. We'll continue to be brothers in the next life. Ling Han and the others also walked to the two graves and said their goodbyes one by one. Gan Wei hugged Li Feng's grave and cried for a long time. The others also had tears in their eyes. They came from the divine central continent together and had experienced countless battles of life and death. Now, there were fewer and fewer people, but the world was cruel. If you didn't fight and work hard, your life might be worse than a dog's. It was better to die a heroic death than to live a cowardly life. No one wanted to live a cowardly life. On the side, Lu Kuang and the others were silent. They naturally understood how Yi Xian and the others felt at the moment, because they had also experienced this kind of loss of close friends and brothers. It was possible that one day they were drinking together, and tomorrow there would be one less person, accidents or tomorrow, you never knew which one would come first. After a while, Yi Xian and the others began to clean up the battlefield. Many of the people they killed were not ordinary people, and the things they carried were naturally not ordinary. An hour later, Yi Xian and the others went straight to the imperial palace of the Tang Empire. Yi Xian rode a black wolf, and on his left and right were Lu Kuang and Lu Banzwang. Behind the three were Bai Zhe, Ling Han, and the members of the 9th mercenary group. If the beasts brought by Bai Zhe were added, they were equivalent to an army, and an elite army at that. Just like that, the group went straight to the imperial palace. Wherever they passed, no one dared to stop them. For a moment, the entire imperial capital of the Tang Empire was in an uproar. Therefore, the 100,000 black armored cavalry outside the Two Realms city suddenly retreated and returned to the imperial capital at an extremely fast speed. Not only did the 100,000 black armor cavalry return to defend, but even the troops from all over the Tang Empire immediately rushed towards the imperial palace. If the palace was gone, it could be said that half of the kingdom of Jiang was dead. Because this was the highest institution of the Tang Empire, and also the brain of the Tang Empire. If this place were to die, the Tang Empire would be like a piece of loose sand that would collapse with a single touch. Not only the official army, but even some martial artists among the common people also rushed to the imperial capital. Because now, it was really time for the country to perish. Tang Empire's imperial capital. Just like that, Yi Xian and the others swaggered straight to the palace. During this time, no one came to stop them, nor did they dare to. No one could stop Yi Xian and the others if the 10,000 Dharma realm powerhouses did not take action. After a while, Yi Xian and the others arrived in front of the imperial palace. At this moment, the gate of the imperial palace was closed, and thousands of archers gathered on the wall. An old man stood in front of the imperial palace. It was the Tang Empire's elder. The elder stared at Yi Xian and said, "Do you really want to fight to the death? If you do this, everyone." At this moment, a sword light suddenly flashed in the field. The next moment, the heads of several Tang Empire soldiers on the wall flew. The moment Yi Xian made his move, Lu Kuang and the others suddenly rushed to the top of the wall. In an instant, dozens of archers on the wall were instantly killed. With the attack of Bai Zhe and the others, the battle on the wall instantly became one-sided. Yi Xian suddenly pointed at the palace gate in the distance, and a flying sword directly slashed at the palace gate. Boom! The palace gate instantly collapsed and fell to the ground. Behind the palace gate, there were more than 2,000 imperial guards of the Tang Empire. These 2,000 imperial guards stared at Yi Xian and the others. There was no fear in their eyes, only unafraid of death. Unafraid of death. They had no way out, they could only fight to the death. Yi Xian did not waste any time and directly rushed towards the soldiers with the spirit elegant sword. And behind him was a horde of nearly 10,000 demonic beasts. From the beginning to the end, Yi Xian did not care about the elder. The elder clenched his fists tightly, his face gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. Yi Xian directly rushed into the group of soldiers, and every time he waved the spirit elegant sword, a bloody head would be cut off. And when the demonic beasts rushed in, the soldiers were instantly routed. Half an hour later, the soldiers on the wall were all dead. In front of Yi Xian, there were corpses everywhere. It was truly a river of blood. From the beginning to the end, the elder did not make a move. He wanted to, but he did not dare. It was not only because Yi Xian had the support of a sword immortal, but also because Lu Kuang and the others were all from the divine central continent. Were they ordinary people? They were definitely not ordinary people. If he were to attack these people, the consequences would be very, very serious. Just like that, Yi Xian and the others went straight into the depths of the imperial palace. Soon, Yi Xian and the others arrived in front of a stone staircase. The stone staircase was very wide, nearly 1,000 feet long. At the end of the stone staircase stood a middle-aged man dressed in a dragon robe. This person was the emperor of the Tang Empire. There were also some soldiers and officials gathered around the emperor. There were even concubines. In this day and age, there were many women who practiced martial arts. Yi Xian held his sword and slowly walked towards the king of the Tang kingdom. The soldiers around the king of the Tang kingdom immediately took a step forward and stood in front of the king of the Tang kingdom. The emperor walked out, and behind him was an old man with 2 sabers on his back. The old man's gaze had been fixed on Yi Xian from the beginning, and it had never stopped. The emperor shook his head and chuckled. "I've calculated everything except you. I never thought that the Tang Empire would end up like this because of you." Yi Xian turned to Lu Banzwang and the others. "Go and search. Take away everything that can be taken away. Whoever dares to stop us, then slaughter the imperial palace. Slaughter the imperial palace." Hearing this, the Tang Empire's people were furious. However, no one dared to make a move. Those who could beat them did not dare to fight, and those who could not beat them did not dare to fight. Just like that, Lu Banzwang and the others went straight to the imperial treasury of the Tang Empire. Looting the imperial palace. Ling Han and the others were excited. This was the imperial palace, the imperial treasury of a country. Even Lu Kuang and the others from the 9th mercenary group were excited. This was the first time they had robbed the imperial palace. In the field, none of the Tang Empire's soldiers and experts dared to stop them. They did not dare to stop them at all. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. This young man in front of them said that he would slaughter the imperial palace. This was definitely not a joke. As long as anyone dared to make a move, the entire Tang Empire would instantly become a Shura purgatory. For a moment, the field was quiet. At this moment, many martial artists suddenly rushed in from outside the imperial palace. These martial artists had come from all over the imperial capital. When they saw the corpses around Yi Xian and the others, these martial artists who were originally full of anger suddenly quieted down. Or rather, their imposing manner suddenly withered. There were not just a few corpses around Yi Xian and the others, but 5,000 to 6,000 corpses. The entire imperial palace was filled with an unpleasant smell of blood. Make a move? No one dared to make a move. Because Yi Xian did not make a move. If Yi Xian made a move, they would definitely fight to the death. However, Yi Xian did not make a move. In front of Yi Xian, the king of the Tang Empire stared at Yi Xian, his right hand clenched tightly. Fight to the death? If Yi Xian made a move, everyone in the Tang Empire would definitely fight to the death because the Tang Empire had no other choice. Since they were all going to die, why not fight to the death? But since Yi Xian did not make a move, many people did not have the idea of fighting to the death. Not to mention the soldiers around him, even he himself did not have the idea of fighting to the death. If they could live, who would want to die? At this moment, Lu Banzwang and the others were frantically looting. Almost everything valuable was taken away. In an imperial palace, how could there be a lack of valuable things? Therefore, it didn't take long for everyone's spatial rings to be filled to the brim. Fortunately, they found some spatial rings in the palace's treasury. Although there weren't many, only a dozen or so, it was enough. In front of the stone steps, Yi Xian and a group of demon beasts were still confronting the king of the Tang Empire and the others. More and more martial artists from the imperial capital came, but no one dared to make a move. The king of the Tang Empire also did not make a move. Obviously, he did not want to die yet. If he wanted to die, he would have already ordered for everyone to perish together. About half an hour later, Lu Banzwang and the others came out from the depths of the imperial palace. Everyone had an undisguised smile and excitement on their faces. Even Lu Kuang and the 9th mercenary group were full of smiles. After looting an imperial palace, it could be seen how rich they were. Lu Banzwang and the others came to Yi Xian's side. At this moment, the atmosphere suddenly became a little tense. At this moment, outside the imperial palace, a large number of troops had arrived. They were all troops from some cities around the imperial capital. Bai Zhe led a group of demon beasts to block in front of the troops, while Lu Kuang and Lu Banzwang looked at Yi Xian. To fight or not to fight? If they fight, it will actually be a bloody battle. Because there were a lot of people from the Tang Empire, and most of them were troops. Of course, if Yi Xian said to fight, then everyone would definitely fight. Everything depended on Yi Xian's decision. Yi Xian walked in front of the king of the Tang Empire. I'll give you two choices. First, follow me back to the Jiang Empire now, and you will personally negotiate with my king. Second, I will kill you. Negotiate? The king chuckled. Is it to be a prisoner? I am the king of a country, you want me to be a prisoner? You're thinking too much, let me tell you. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly slashed out with his sword. The sword was extremely fast, and many people in the field could not react in time. In an instant, the field suddenly quieted down. The king of the Tang Empire stared at Yi Xian, his eyes full of disbelief. At this moment, a light breeze blew, and the king's head suddenly fell from his neck, blood pouring out like a pillar. In an instant, everyone in the field was stunned. He was killed just like that. Not to mention the people of the Tang Empire, even Lu Banzwang and the others were stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian wiped the blood on the spirit elegant sword, and then said softly, "Not going to the Jiang Empire? Then go to hell." Having said that, he faced the imperial family not far away. "Come, let's change the king, then we'll continue talking." Everyone. Chapter 142. The surroundings were deathly silent. All the soldiers and cultivators of the Tang Empire were stunned on the spot. The dignified king of the Tang Empire had been killed just like that. Didn't they say they wanted to negotiate? They killed him because the negotiation didn't go well? Everyone looked at Yi Xian. They were furious. All of them were furious. Because this was undoubtedly a great humiliation to the Tang Empire. Thus, some hot-blooded cultivators charged at Yi Xian and the others. Since someone had made a move, the others weren't so afraid anymore and were about to attack. However, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot, and Lu Banzwang vanished along with him. Bang! 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 Hiss! Hiss! Explosions and tearing sounds suddenly resounded. It didn't take long for Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang to return to where they stood, and there were over a dozen corpses on the ground. All the others who were about to charge out were stunned. He was killed just like that. The others in the surroundings instantly didn't dare to move. It was an instant kill. Yi Xian walked over to the members of the Tang Empire's imperial family with his sword in hand. "Is there no one to be the next king?" Meanwhile, a black-robed old man stood in front of Yi Xian, and he carried 2 sabers on his back. A Dharma realm expert. There were only 2 Dharma realm experts here. One of them was the king of the Tang Empire, and the other was the black-robed old man. Yi Xian's face was expressionless. "What? You can't help but attack in the end?" He'd sensed the black-robed old man's killing intent as soon as he arrived here. The black-robed old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian while the 2 sabers on his back were trembling violently. Meanwhile, Lu Kuang suddenly sneered, "What? You intend to bully the weak?" As he spoke, he walked over to Yi Xian's side and pointed his saber at the black-robed old man. "The Central Divine Continent hates bullying the weak the most. If you dare to attack, then I'll immediately summon the Dharma realm from the Central Divine Continent." Ling Han and the others nodded successively. Dharma realm? Which one of them didn't have a Dharma realm expert behind them? There was an unknown rule in the Central Divine Continent, and that was that the young should solve their own problems. If the strong bullied the weak, that would be extremely shameful. He didn't dare. There were too many great powers in the Central Divine Prefecture. If the seniors of the Central Divine Prefecture were to act, then it would definitely lead to a chaotic battle. So, it was strictly prohibited by the higher-ups. However, it was different in Qingzhou. It was a small place and there weren't many requirements. However, the situation was different now. Because Lu Banzwang and the others were from the Central Divine Prefecture. Their backgrounds were not simple. If he really wanted to bully the weak, he would definitely be poking a hornet's nest. Not to mention the Tang Empire, even Kuraki Academy and the Dark World wouldn't dare. The black-robed elder's expression was terrifyingly gloomy. At this moment, he realized that it was no longer just between Yi Xian and the Tang Empire, but between the Tang Empire and this group of people in front of him. It should be said that this was a matter between Kuraki Academy, the Dark World, and Yi Xian, but the Tang Empire wanted to get involved. A moment later, the black-robed old man shook his head and sighed. "You brought this upon yourself." With that, he turned around and disappeared. With the departure of the black-robe old man, only the 10,000 law realm was left in the Tang Empire. He had even less confidence. Yi Xian faced the Tang Empire's imperial family members. No one came out. At this moment, a young man stood up. The young man looked straight at Yi Xian without the slightest fear in his eyes. "I am the crown prince of the Tang Empire." Yi Xian nodded. To the state of Jiang? The young man sneered. Let's go. However, Yi Xian, remember, I will repay you 100-fold for what you have done to my Tang Empire today. You. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and the young man's voice came to an abrupt end. The young man's head flew off. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. Seeing this scene, the Tang Empire's imperial family members' faces instantly turned pale. Yi Xian's right hand shook lightly, and the blood on the spirit elegant sword instantly disappeared. He sheathed the sword and said softly, "You won't have another day." With that said, he faced the Tang Empire's imperial family members with fear on their faces. Someone smarter. Come on, someone smarter. It was not that Yi Xian did not think of slaughtering the Tang Empire's imperial family, but he thought deeper. Slaughtering the Tang Empire's imperial family was not a good thing for the Jiang Empire. Because without the Tang Empire's imperial family, the Tang Empire would still exist, and the Tang Empire's main force would still exist. Without the Tang Empire's imperial family, there would be warlords within the Tang Empire. Although this was also a good thing for the Jiang Empire, why not nurture a puppet of the Tang Empire's imperial family? Most importantly, if the Tang Empire's imperial family dies, the warlords can truly gather their troops and stand on their own. At that time, although the Jiang Empire would no longer have the Tang Empire, there would be other countries. With the Tang Empire's imperial family around, the warlords would not dare to have their own mercenaries and stand on their own. Even if they stand on their own, the Jiang Empire could legitimately borrow the name of the Tang Empire's imperial family to send troops to annihilate them in the future. In fact, this was very troublesome, but there was no other way. If they really slaughtered the Tang Empire's imperial family, they would have to kill their way out of here. Kill these people, and the Tang Empire's soldiers who were rushing back to the capital. There was no end. They might not be able to kill them. He didn't want anything to happen to the people around him. Ling Han and the others were still injured and couldn't withstand the torment. What he had to do now was to bring them out safely. At this time, a youth stood up. The youth was only 15 or 16 years old. He was obviously a little timid, but he still stood up. The youth walked in front of Yi Xian. He glanced at Yi Xian and said softly, "I'll do it." Yi Xian said indifferently, "What's your name?" The youth said softly, "Tang Mu." Yi Xian nodded, "From now on, you are the king of the Tang Empire." With that, he pointed his sword at the Tang Empire's imperial family. "Who wants to be the king? Come out now." None of the imperial family members came out. Yi Xian nodded slightly, "Then no one has any objections." With that, he walked in front of the youth. "Come with us to the Jiang Empire? Don't worry, we will guarantee your safety." The youth lowered his head slightly, "All right." Yi Xian faced the Tang Empire's soldiers. "Remember, he came out to save you." The soldiers were silent. Yi Xian turned to Lu Kuang, "Brother Lu, please give us a ride." Lu Kuang thought for a moment, then nodded, "Sure." Just like that, Yi Xian and the others brought the new king of the Tang Empire out of the city. Yi Xian even let the Tang Empire's soldiers follow Tang Mu. During this time, no one stopped them. Return to the Jiang Empire. Yi Xian turned to look at Ling Han and the others. He wanted to bring these brothers out safely. Now that he had cultivated the sword eye, although he couldn't open his eyes, he could already see anything. He could even see more clearly than when he had eyes. After all, he was now observing everything with his heart. On both sides of the streets of the Tang Empire's imperial capital, countless people stood. These people were all looking at Yi Xian and the others. In their eyes, there was no concealment of hostility. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yinshi suddenly said, "They are very likely to take revenge on our Jiang Empire in the future." Yi Xian said softly, "Therefore, our Jiang Empire must be strong enough. If our country is strong enough, others will never dare to bully us. The same goes for us. After we return, we will all try our best to break through to the divine unity tier." As he spoke, he glanced at Ling Han and the others. You too, everyone must reach the Divine Unity tier. Divine Unity tier. Ethereal opening tier was barely enough to survive in Qingzhou, but in the Divine Central Continent, it was completely insufficient. For example, if they were to fight with the 9th mercenary group, they definitely wouldn't be able to defeat them. Their current enemies were Kuraki Academy and the Dark Dimension, and these two powers were great powers in the Central Divine Prefecture. They had to become stronger. At this moment, a group of cavalrymen suddenly appeared on the open ground in the distance. There were only about 10,000 cavalrymen. Among them, Yi Xian saw some familiar faces, because some of them were Black Blade Guards and Daredevil Battalion. And the leader was a middle-aged man. Pei Xiaohu, the first great marshal of the Tang Empire. After learning that Yi Xian and the others had entered the imperial capital of the Tang Empire, Pei Xiaohu immediately withdrew his troops from Two Realms City and rushed back with his army of 100,000. In order to return to the imperial capital as soon as possible, he led the vanguard first. Unfortunately, he was still too late. The two sides faced off. Pei Xiaohu spurred his horse and arrived in front of Yi Xian and the others, his eyes fixed on Yi Xian. Behind Pei Xiaohu, over 10,000 cavalrymen stood in formation, ready to attack at any moment. After a moment, Pei Xiaohu suddenly said, "What a good one, Yi Xian. I never thought that the Tang Empire would lose to you." Yi Xian rode his black wolf and arrived in front of Pei Xiaohu, saying, "Two choices. First, fight. If we fight, perhaps we will all die, but your Tang Empire will definitely perish. Second, negotiate." Pei Xiaohu smirked coldly. "Negotiate? You're negotiating? You're threatening, you." Yi Xian suddenly pointed his sword at Pei Xiaohu, saying, "I'm threatening. You don't like it? Then let's go to war. Fight until your Tang Empire is completely destroyed." Pei Xiaohu's expression instantly turned ferocious. "You want to fight? Then report." At this moment, a cavalryman suddenly galloped over from afar. The cavalryman quickly came to Pei Xiaohu's side, then directly jumped off his horse and knelt on one knee in front of Pei Xiaohu, reporting to Marshal, "The 9th princess of the Jiang country suddenly led tens of thousands of cavalrymen to chase after me. My army is in a stalemate with them at Imo Mountain. Marshal, please give us instructions." 9th princess. Hearing this, Pei Xiaohu's face suddenly became extremely ugly. In the end, this woman did not miss this opportunity and decisively sent troops. Pei Xiaohu fell silent. At this moment, Tang Mu suddenly said, "Old Pei, my Tang Empire has no other choice." Marshal Pei looked at Tang Mu. "Surrender just like that?" Tang Mu shook his head. "Isn't it a negotiation? Anything can be negotiated." Marshal Pei smiled bitterly. "6th Prince, negotiation? If you go to the Jiang country, how can we negotiate? There's no negotiation at all. Whatever the Jiang country says, my Tang Empire can only do it." Tang Mu said softly, "Old Pei, have you thought about the countless people in the Tang Empire? If we fight, and the Jiang country's army enters, do you know how many people will die?" Speaking of this, he walked in front of Marshal Pei. "My Tang Empire lost. If we lose, we have to pay the price." Lost. In an instant, two streams of clear liquid flowed down Pei Xiaohu's body, the unyielding marshal. Chapter 143. War had always been cruel. The Tang Empire had started this war. If they won, they would naturally obtain countless benefits. However, the Tang Empire had lost. If they lost, they would have to pay the price. The Tang Empire had lost. At this moment, the iron-blooded commander in front of him clearly recognized this point. He could continue to fight, but countless soldiers and citizens of the Jiang Empire would die. Now, he still had a little capital to negotiate because the main force of the Tang Empire was still there. However, if he continued to fight, the Tang Empire would not have the qualifications to negotiate at all. Especially when the Jiang Empire's army entered the Tang Empire, the citizens of the Tang Empire would suffer. The scene suddenly quietened down. After a long time, Pei Xiaohu bowed slightly to Tang Mu. Let this old subject accompany the king to the Jiang Empire. Tang Mu sighed softly. Then I'll have to trouble you. Just like that, Yi Xian and the others headed towards the Jiang Empire with the tens of thousands of cavalrymen. The Tang cavalrymen were all looking at Yi Xian. Some were angry, some were unwilling, and some were filled with killing intent. Yi Xian. The entire Tang Empire was not defeated by the Jiang Empire, but by this young man in front of them. Pei Xiaohu glanced at Yi Xian with a complicated gaze. Why did the Jiang Empire have such a genius? Moreover, it was a genius who cared about the Jiang Empire. If the Tang Empire also had such a genius, the corner of Pei Xiaohu's mouth was somewhat bitter. The geniuses of the Tang Empire were all recruited by Kuraki College, and those who entered Kuraki College didn't care about their country at all. In their hearts, there was only Kuraki College and their own future. Country? Many people did not even have such a concept. Of course, he knew very well that the Tang Empire was not completely defeated by Yi Xian. The reason why the Tang Empire lost so miserably was because they were tricked by Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. This was because Kuraki Academy had vowed that they would deal with Yi Xian, and then asked the Tang Empire for assistance. However, not only did they fail to destroy Yi Xian, they even provoked the geniuses of the Central Divine Region. They brought this upon themselves. Pei Xiaohu withdrew his thoughts and slowly closed his eyes. There was no point in thinking about anything else now. An hour later, Yi Xian and the others arrived at Two World City. Outside Two World City, Zhang Jiu was still dressed in her silver armor, and behind her were thousands of State of Jiang soldiers. When they saw Yi Xian, all the soldiers in Two Realms City erupted. State Scholar Yi. State Scholar Yi. On and within the city walls, countless people roared in anger. The deeds of Yi Xian and the others in the Tang Empire had already spread throughout the Jiang country. Excited. The whole of Jiang country was excited. In an instant, Yi Xian's name became a household name. It had even surpassed Enlanxiu. There was no one in the entire state of Jiang who did not know of State Scholar Yi Xian. When she saw Yi Xian, the corners of Zhang Jiu's lips quirked up slightly. She directly walked up to Yi Xian and the others. Yi Xian leaped off his horse, and was just about to speak when Zhang Jiu suddenly gave him a hug. She hugged him very tightly. Yi Xian's body stiffened slightly. Everyone was stunned. In the next instant, Ling Han and the others directly started to make a ruckus. A moment later, Zhang Jiu released Yi Xian. She did not hesitate in the slightest. She lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder and said, "Welcome home. Welcome home." Yi Xian's heart was a little complicated because this time, he had almost not been able to return. Zhang Jiu walked up to Pei Xiaohu, who was standing nearby. Pei Xiaohu was expressionless. As a prisoner, what could he say? Zhang Jiu suddenly said, "Come, invite Marshal Pei and the king of the Tang Empire into the city. Remember, treat them well, and do not show the slightest bit of neglect." Behind Zhang Jiu, the thousands of soldiers parted to the sides. Tang Mu and Pei Xiaohu were invited into Two Realms City, but the soldiers were blocked outside the city. Just as Yi Xian and the others were about to enter the city, Lu Kuang suddenly said, "We won't be going in." Yi Xian and the others turned to look at Lu Kuang, and Lu Kuang looked at Yi Xian, and said, "Before we came, we already had a mission to complete. Now it's time to go back." Yi Xian nodded slightly, and he took out a gold card. At this time, Lu Kuang suddenly shook his head, and said, "No need. In the Tang Imperial Palace, we have already earned hundreds of millions of gold coins. It's a huge profit." As he said this, he turned to look at Lu Banzwang, and said, "Go back with me." Lu Banzwang shook his head, and said, "No." Lu Kuang sighed softly, and said, "Can't you give in to Dad? It's not like you don't know his temper." Lu Banzwang said calmly, "I won't go back." Lu Kuang sighed again. He knew his sister's temper. If she said she wouldn't go back, then she definitely wouldn't go back. A moment later, he said softly, "Take good care of yourself." After that, he whistled. Very soon, over 20 goshawks appeared in the distant sky and landed in front of Two World City. Countless people fixed their eyes on the 20 goshawks at this moment. A Nether Passage realm demonic beast was still rare. Lu Kuang and the others flew onto the back of the eagle. He glanced at Lu Banzwang, but Lu Banzwang was expressionless and did not say anything. Lu Kuang felt helpless. Finally, he looked at Yi Xian. "Brother Yi, see you at the Central Divine Prefecture." Brother Yi. Without a doubt, he was willing to make friends with Yi Xian. In fact, under normal circumstances, no one would refuse to be friends with a swordsman. In the Central Divine Continent, strength and character were equally important when it came to making friends with others. Neither was dispensable. Yi Xian nodded. "See you in the future." Lu Kuang nodded slightly. Then, he and his brothers behind him rode the goshawks and soared into the sky. Soon, they completely disappeared from the sight of Yi Xian and the others. The 9th mercenary group. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the sky. These 20 people were all in the divine combination tier, and they were the kind that didn't rely on their strength. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly walked to his side. "They are still not the best of the Central Divine Prefecture." Yi Xian looked at Lu Banzwang, and Lu Banzwang said calmly, "The best, even a force like Kuraki Academy wouldn't dare to provoke them." Yi Xian smiled slightly. "Our bandit army will also be as powerful in the future." Lu Banzwang did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled. "You don't believe me?" Lu Banzwang said softly, "Let's do our best." "Let's do our best." Yi Xian nodded. "Let's do our best and work hard together. We'll make a name for ourselves together." As he said this, he turned to Ling Han and the others. "Are you confident?" "Brother Yi, it's very difficult to survive in the Central Divine Prefecture. However, with Brother Yi and Big Sister here, we're all confident." Hearing this, everyone instantly laughed loudly. At this moment, Bai Zai suddenly said, "Bandit Yi, I'm going back." Yi Xian looked at Bai Zai, and Bai Zai smiled bitterly. "This time, I forced my foster father to allow me to bring the demonic beasts. Now, I must bring these demonic beast brothers back. This is what I promised him." Yi Xian asked softly, "Do you want me to go back with you?" Bai Zai hesitated, and then said, "My foster father indeed wants to see you." Yi Xian smiled. "Then you can stay for half a day. We'll go back together tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I also want to discuss some business with your foster father. He'll be interested." Bai Zai smiled bitterly. "My foster father isn't very easy to talk to." Yi Xian said, "That's fine. At worst, we'll just fight." Bai Zai glanced at Yi Xian. "He's at the peak of the 10,000 techniques tier." Yi Xian said, "Pretend I didn't say anything." After saying this, he turned around and left. Bai Zai, after Yi Xian and the others entered Two Realms City, they found that the city was empty. There were only soldiers, and no commoners. At the side, Jiang Jiu said, "When the Tang Empire attacked, I had already evacuated everyone in the city. Now, only the soldiers remain in Two Realms City." At this point, she looked at Yi Xian. "But now, they can all return." Yi Xian nodded. "That's for the best. Also, as for how to negotiate with the Tang Empire, you can decide for yourselves." Jiang Jiu said calmly, "Don't worry, we won't lose out. Destroy a country. The Jiang Empire actually didn't have the strength to destroy the Tang Empire. If they forcefully destroyed it, it would only cause the Jiang Empire to sink into the swamp of war. At that time, the Jiang Empire would suffer heavy losses, especially since the Jiang Empire still had two strong enemies, the Chu Empire and the Yu Empire. These two countries hadn't withdrawn their troops yet. But now, the Jiang Empire could free up its hands to deal with these two countries. In a spacious tent, Yi Xian, Ling Han, and the others sat around a table. Divide the spoils. Previously in the Tang Empire, they seized the treasures of the Tang Empire's Zhongmu Academy and some elites of Deyun Zhongmu Academy. Apart from that, there were also the treasures and money of some cultivators from all over Qing province, as well as some miscellaneous items. Of course, the most important thing was that they had looted the entire Tang Empire's national treasury. That was the national treasury. Everyone took out all the treasures that hadn't been divided before. In an instant, the entire tent was piled full of gold coins, spirit tools, supreme-grade spirit tools, spirit stones, supreme-grade spirit stones, jade-grade spirit stones, earth-grade martial arts techniques, gold, silver, jade, there was everything. Mo Yinqi and Bai Zhe were stunned. Meanwhile, Ling Han and the others were also excited, unable to suppress their excitement and agitation. This time, they had really struck it rich. Especially Yi Xian, he had a batch of supreme-grade spirit crossbows, a total of 30 crossbows, which could be used to build a crossbow team. It could be said that the Jiang Empire and the Tang Empire didn't have the ability to equip an army with such equipment, or in other words, even if they could, it would be a great blow to their vitality. After Lu Banzwang counted, they began to divide the spoils. Everyone's share was the same, but Bai Zhe and Mo Yinqi took the initiative to withdraw, because they hadn't participated before. However, they still got a share, because if they hadn't rushed over with the demonic beast army, everyone wouldn't have been able to leave the Tang Empire. This time, it took a full hour to divide the spoils. In the end, Yi Xian's personal wealth was almost 500 million gold coins, 1.5 million supreme-grade spirit stones, 7 earth-grade low-grade martial arts technique scrolls, 5 low-grade cultivation technique scrolls, 21 supreme-grade spirit tools, 30 supreme-grade crossbows, and the rest of the miscellaneous items added together were worth at least tens of millions of gold coins. Right now, he could be said to be richer than some first-class aristocratic families. There were also quite a number of people like Lu Banzwang, each of them worth hundreds of millions. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly stood up, and everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Old Mo, bring 50 million gold coins to the 9th building head of the Tang Empire, and say thank you for their help. If he doesn't accept it, say it's for the friends of the drunken immortal brothel. Also, please inform the 5th building head that I have something to discuss with him." As he spoke, he took a deep breath. Divine combination tier. We have money, we must all reach the divine combination tier. We must also equip ourselves with the best equipment. And everyone must at least have a clear grade equipment. Divine combination tier. Chapter 144. Everyone gazed at Yi Xian. The divine combination tier. They were all at the nether passage tier now. Indeed, this was already very strong, and it could be said that they were the top group in the territory of Azure County. However, was this enough? No. It was far from enough. Because their opponent was Kuraki Academy, the Dark World. Even though they'd heavily injured Kuraki Academy this time, the Dark World hadn't suffered any losses. Moreover, Kuraki Academy had only dispatched 20 Dao soldiers. To them, the deaths of 20 Dao soldiers wasn't a huge loss. Moreover, Azure County's Kuraki Academy was still there. There was still the Great Cloud Empire. This empire had sent a team of crossbows to target them. The sense of danger was still very strong. As long as Kuraki Academy and the Dark World were still alive, the matter would never end. Mo Yinqi immediately nodded when he heard Yi Xian, and then he turned around and left. Everyone gazed silently at Yi Xian. Yi Xian sat down and continued, "Since I've established a bandit mercenary group, then I'll do a good job. Now, I'll set a rule. All those who join my bandit mercenary group will share honor and disgrace together. Share life and death together. Share honor and disgrace together. Share life and death together. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian, and then he nodded slightly. All right. Everyone else nodded. Actually, they'd experienced so many battles of life and death in the Tang Empire, so they'd already shared life and death together. Yi Xian stood up. All of you rest well and recuperate from your injuries. I'll prepare the rest. Meanwhile, Lu Banzwang suddenly said, remember to notify us if you want to buy something. We'll do our own things, and we have to be clear about everything. Otherwise, it'll be a mess. Ling Han hurriedly nodded as well. Big sister is right. It's good to have brothers, but we still have to be clear about things. Otherwise, some people might take everything for granted. Brother Yi, you have to understand this. Yi Li and the others nodded as well. They were well aware of Yi Xian's temper, and he was absolutely not a petty person. However, there were times when they really had to be clear about things. Blood brothers should settle accounts clearly. Yi Xian smiled and said, don't worry, I won't pay you. Stop daydreaming. After saying this, he turned around and left. Inside the tent, everyone looked at each other. Outside the tent, Yi Xian encountered Jiang Jiu. Jiang Jiu was still dressed in his silver armor, and looked as valiant as ever. Jiang Jiu was still dressed in his silver armor. Jiang Jiu of Jiang Jiu. On a quiet street, the two of them were walking slowly. The two of them didn't speak at first. They just walked like that. After walking for who knew how long, Jiang Jiu suddenly said, don't take such risks next time. Soldiers. Yi Xian had gone deep into the heart of the Tang Empire. She was dumbfounded when she first received the news. His first reaction was anger. Because what Yi Xian was doing was too risky. His second reaction was anxiety. Therefore, she had sent countless spies to the Tang Empire to gather information. Fortunately, with the help of the drunken immortal Yin, she was able to send troops to help at the critical moment. Yi Xian said softly, I didn't think so much at that time. Speaking up to hear, he looked at Jiang Jiu. Are there any movements from the Chu and Yu countries? Jiang Jiu shook his head. There's no movement. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? Jiang Jiu sneered, the Tang Empire has fallen into such a situation, how could they still dare to make a move? Yi Xian nodded. What's your plan? Jiang Jiu looked at Yi Xian. What do you think? Yi Xian said indifferently, naturally, we can't just let it go like this. Jiang Jiu said with a smile, of course. This battle isn't something they can start or withdraw from as they please. At this point, she paused, you've done such a meritorious service for the state of Jiang, have you thought of any rewards? Yi Xian was taken aback for a moment before he shook his head. That's not necessary. Jiang Jiu rolled his eyes at Yi Xian. I knew you'd be like this. I've already asked for the reward for you. You'll know when you return to Blue Waves Academy. Yi Xian was about to speak when a figure suddenly landed not far from Yi Xian and Jiang Jiu. This person was the 9th floor master of the state of Jiang. No, she's already the 5th floor master. Seeing the 5th floor master, Jiang Jiu nodded. You guys continue chatting. After speaking, she turned around and left. The 5th floor master walked in front of Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and smiled. Nether Passage Realm. Congratulations, little friend. Yi Xian cupped his fists. Senior, I have something to ask of you. The 5th floor master said seriously, little friend, please speak. Yi Xian said solemnly, I want to break through to the Divine Combination Realm. Divine Combination Realm. The 5th floor master was silent. Yi Xian asked, what's wrong? The 5th floor master was silent for a moment. Then, he said, Divine Combination Pill. It was an extremely precious pill that contained precious 5 elemental spiritual energy. If a Nether Passage realm expert were to consume it, there was a high chance that they would be able to use the 5 elemental spiritual energy to break through and reach the divine unity realm. But at this point, he smiled bitterly. But it's very expensive. Very expensive. One pill costs at least 100 million gold coins. 100 million gold coins. Yi Xian was shocked. 100 million gold coins was not a small amount. Even some of the first-class families in the state of Jiang couldn't take out 100 million gold coins at once. The 5th floor master continued, moreover, this divine combination pill is very rare. If we can sell it properly, it's very possible to sell it for 130 million gold coins. At this point, he looked at Yi Xian. If you need it, I can transfer 1 or 2 from the headquarters. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Senior, I need around 13 pills. 13 pills. The 5th floor master was stunned. A moment later, the 5th floor master smiled bitterly. Little friend Yi, you're asking for too much. Yi Xian bowed slightly. Thank you for your trouble, senior. The 5th floor master fell silent for a long time. In the end, he nodded. I will contact the headquarters and ask them to help me purchase the divine combination pills. As for whether I can collect all of them, the old man can't guarantee. However, the drunken immortal house will do its best. Yi Xian cupped his fists. Thank you. The 5th floor master smiled. We're all on the same side. There's no need to be so courteous. Yi Xian continued, Senior, there's one more thing. I need 13 bright grade spiritual weapons. If there's any defensive bright grade spiritual energy, I want them too. Bright grade spiritual weapons. The 5th floor master thought for a moment and nodded. It's easy as long as you have the money. However, I still need to purchase from the headquarters. Therefore, I need some time, around 10 days. 10 days. Yi Xian nodded. All right. There's one more thing. Senior, the drunken immortal house and dark world might not let this matter rest. If they make any movements, I hope that you can help me investigate. In terms of intelligence, Blue Waves Academy was definitely inferior to the drunken immortal house. Not to mention Blue Waves Academy, even Jiang country was inferior. The 5th floor master smiled. That's naturally not a problem. All the spies of the drunken immortal house will keep an eye on Blue Waves Academy and Dark World. If they make any movements, the drunken immortal house will inform you immediately. Yi Xian nodded. Thank you. The 5th floor master shook his head. Little friend is too polite. I will contact the headquarters now. I hope that we can settle the matter of the pills and spiritual weapons as soon as possible. Goodbye. After speaking, he turned around and disappeared. After the 5th floor master left, Yi Xian returned to his tent. Then, he entered the prison pagoda. Inside the pagoda, he sat cross-legged. Suddenly, the elegant spirit sword flew out from his body and landed in front of him. True sword. At this moment, the elegant spirit sword was already a true sword. The so-called true was actually the essence. What was essence? The essence of the sword. Not only the sword, all things had their own essence. True sword meant that the sword could already feel its own essence. Actually, humans could continuously evolve and improve. The sword was the same. This was a sword with life. When it reached a certain level, it would develop its own intelligence. At that time, this sword would reach a whole new level. When the exquisite spirit sword became a true sword, his battle power naturally rose by a large margin. It could be said that with this sword, he could even easily kill a god fusion stage expert. Of course, his strength didn't come entirely from this sword. Even without this sword, he could still kill a god fusion stage expert. It was just that with this sword, he could do it even more easily. This was the importance of equipment. And now, what he needed to do was to stabilize his realm. Because he broke through to High Sky Realm in a hurry, his realm was slightly unstable. What he needed to do now was to stabilize his realm. Only by stabilizing his realm would he dare to continue breaking through to Divine Unity Realm. Otherwise, even if he reached Divine Unity Realm, there would still be repercussions. Just like this, 2 days later, Yi Xian felt that he had adapted to the Nether Passage realm and left the World Prison Pagoda. To Mount Mang. After bidding farewell to Lu Banzwang and the others, he and Bai Zhe led a group of demonic beasts straight to Mount Mang. Demonic beasts. There weren't many demonic beasts in the Qingzhou, but there were. Demonic beasts usually lived in the vast mountains and their relationship with humans wasn't good. However, humans and demonic beasts had always lived in harmony because both sides didn't dare to fight. In addition, there were world protectors above. Therefore, demonic beasts and humans could be said to live in harmony. And this time, Bai Zhe brought demonic beasts to the Tang Empire. It could be said that the surrounding countries were shocked. Because this was the first time that demonic beasts participated in a war between humans. At the same time, the surrounding countries were also wary of the Jiang Empire. Because if the Jiang Empire and the demonic beasts of Mount Mang joined forces, their strength would definitely be comparable to the Ning Empire. About 6 hours later, Yi Xian and Bai Zhe brought the group of demonic beasts to Mount Mang. As soon as they entered the territory of Mount Mang, the sky instantly darkened because the trees were too tall. Ordinary people standing under the trees and looking up, they couldn't even see the top of the trees. It could be described as covering the sky. Beside Yi Xian, Bai Zhe suddenly said, "Bandit Yi, my foster father isn't very easy to talk to." Yi Xian glanced at Bai Zhe. "Is your foster father really in the 10,000 Laws realm?" Bai Zhe nodded. "How can it be fake?" Yi Xian thought about his current strength. After a moment, he said seriously, "We are reasonable people. Don't worry, I am a person who respects my elders. He is my elder, so I won't fight with him. I will communicate with him properly." Bai Zhe glanced at Yi Xian and muttered, "You speak as if you can defeat him." P.S. Yesterday, a reader wished me a happy birthday at midnight. Then, I suddenly woke up and realized that today is my birthday. Speaking of which, everyone might not be able to celebrate their birthday, especially in recent years. I am so sad. Today, I don't ask for monthly votes, but I ask for a blessing. Chapter 145. Under Bai Zhe's lead, they soon arrived at the depths of Empty Mang while the demon beasts retreated. To them, entering Empty Mang was like returning to their home. Bai Zhe brought Yi Xian to the entrance of a cave. The cave was extremely large, 5 to 6 times larger than the entrance to the Jiang nation's imperial capital. When they arrived, some demon beasts suddenly appeared around them. There were all kinds of demon beasts, some of which Yi Xian had never seen before. These demon beasts came in front of Bai Zhe and were very intimate with him. Bai Zhe was also very happy. At that moment, the demon beasts suddenly retreated to the side, and a middle-aged man walked out of the cave not far away. The middle-aged man was abnormally tall, much larger than Yi Xian. He looked especially burly and valiant. Demon Monarch Mount Mang. Demon Monarch Mount Mang's gaze landed on Bai Zhe, who grinned. "Godfather, this is my elder brother." "Elder brother." Demon Monarch Mount Mang narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Yi Xian. At that moment, Yi Xian walked over and bowed deeply. "Greetings, Godfather." "Godfather." Bai Zhe was stunned. Demon Monarch Mount Mang was also slightly taken aback. "Godfather? What the hell?" Yi Xian said seriously, "Bai Zhe and I are brothers, so his godfather is naturally my godfather. Oh, by the way, I brought a little toy for foster father. I hope foster father will kindly accept it." With that said, he opened his right hand, and a tray appeared in his hand. On the tray were 10 fist-sized fruits. These fruits were white with a hint of red, and they emitted a fragrant scent. Peach spirit fruits. Upon seeing these fruits, the eyes of the demon beasts present immediately widened. Peach spirit fruits were equivalent to void-breaching pills that could help demon beasts improve themselves. However, peach spirit fruits were many times more precious than void-breaching pills. This was because it was much more difficult for demon beasts to improve compared to humans. In other words, demon beasts were much more backward than humans. They could not refine pills, and they basically did not have the ability to refine artifacts. Compared to humans, they were lacking in innovation, but they had innate physical advantages, such as lifespan and physique. When comparing demonic beasts of the same level to humans, humans would generally not be able to defeat demonic beasts. Generally speaking, demon beasts relied on the accumulation of time to increase their strength. Apart from using time to accumulate strength, they could also use natural treasures to increase their strength. However, these natural treasures were too precious. For example, the peach spirit fruit was worth around 2 million gold coins. Yi Xian was actually very generous of him to give 10 of them at once. The reason why he came to Mount Mang a day later was to look for the spiritual peach fruit. Fortunately, it was the Drunken Immortal restaurant. Otherwise, even if he had the money, it would be difficult to find it in such a short time. Demon Monarch Mount Mang glanced at Yi Xian and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly took out a golden card and handed it to Demon Monarch Mount Mang. Senior, there are 100 million gold coins in this card. Consider it a gift from Bai Zhe and me, 100 million gold coins. Demon Monarch Mount Mang's expression immediately changed. 100 million gold coins was not a small amount. To Mount Mang, it was a huge fortune. One had to know that the entire Mount Mang might not even be able to produce 100 million gold coins. At the side, Bai Zhe was also somewhat shocked because he did not expect Yi Xian to take out 100 million gold coins to give Mount Mang. Demon Monarch Mount Mang looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, he asked, "Why?" Yi Xian said sternly, "If not for Mount Mang's help this time, we would have died in the Tang Empire. I, Yi Xian, will forever remember this favor in my Blue Waves Academy." He had never felt that it was right for others to help him. If others helped him, he should always remember this favor. Moreover, he should repay them when he could. Kindness must be repaid, and enmity must be avenged. Demon Monarch Mount Mang was silent for a moment before saying, "Come in and have a seat. This chapter is not over, please continue." With that said, he turned and walked into the cave. Yi Xian handed the gold card and peach spirit fruits to Bai Zhe and gestured. Bai Zhe hesitated. "Bandit Yi, this," Yi Xian kicked Bai Zhe's butt. "What's with all the nonsense? Hurry up and send it over." Bai Zhe glanced at Yi Xian and grinned. "All right. I'll listen to you, big brother." With that said, he quickly chased after Demon Monarch Mount Mang. Standing where he was, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Then he followed them inside. The cave was very large and spacious. Furthermore, there were some tools used by humans, which surprised Yi Xian. The three of them sat around the table. There was some food and wine on the table. Demon Monarch Mount Mang sized up Yi Xian. "Little Zhe said that you have something to discuss with me?" Yi Xian nodded. "I want to cooperate with Senior. My Blue Waves Academy wants to recruit a batch of demon beasts." "Recruit demon beasts?" Demon Monarch Mount Mang narrowed his eyes. "Enslave?" As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere instantly tensed up. Yi Xian shook his head. "No, it's students. If Mount Mang's demon beasts are in my Blue Waves Academy, they will be students of my Blue Waves Academy. They can study and cultivate with human students, and the cultivation resources they receive will be the same as students of my Blue Waves Academy. They are equal to human students in my Blue Waves Academy." Hearing that, Demon Monarch Mount Mang's expression changed. Students. In the territory of Qing Province, there were Blue Waves Academy and Kuraki Academy, but these two academies had never accepted demonic beasts as students. Even if there were some demonic beasts in the academy, they were slaves and basically weren't students. It could be said that these two academies looked down on demon beasts. In other words, the entire human race looked down on demon beasts. They felt that demon beasts were wild beasts or even animals. If demon beasts were not strong enough, they would have long disappeared from this world. And now, Yi Xian actually wanted to recruit demon beasts as students. This was something that had never happened before in the Qing province. Demon monarch Mount Mang looked at Yi Xian. "Are you serious?" Yi Xian nodded. "I'm serious. If they enter my Blue Waves Academy, they will be a member of my Blue Waves Academy. I will treat them equally. Of course, senior should know that I have a lot of enemies. My ambition is also quite big because I want to make Blue Waves Academy the best academy in Blue Firmament world. Therefore, if they enter my Blue Waves Academy, it will be an opportunity for them, an opportunity to improve, but it will also be accompanied by danger." Demon monarch Mount Mang looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian did not speak either. He had said everything he needed to say and was very frank. Now, it was up to Demon monarch Mount Mang. At this moment, Bai Zhe suddenly said, "Godfather, I think this is an opportunity for Mount Mang. Those brothers should go out and explore. The outside world is really big, and the people out there are really strong." After witnessing the strength of Ling Han and the others, Bai Zhe and Mo Yinchi could be said to be deeply aware of their own shortcomings. They were really strong. However, Ling Han and the others were not the top in the central divine continent. There were really many geniuses and monsters. A moment later, Demon monarch Mount Mang looked at Yi Xian. "Are you sure you can treat them equally?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes. Not only that, I will vigorously nurture them and let them surpass their current selves." Demon monarch Mount Mang said again, "Demonic beasts are wild and hard to tame. If they enter Blue Waves Academy, it is very likely that they will not be restrained and even act recklessly. How will you deal with them?" Yi Xian smiled. "As long as they can beat me, they can do anything they want. If they can't beat me, then they will obediently listen to me. Otherwise, they will be beaten by me. This chapter is not finished. Please continue." Demon monarch Mount Mang was silent for a moment, then nodded. "All right, Mount Mang will cooperate with Blue Waves Academy. What requirements do you have for the demonic beasts that want to enter Blue Waves Academy?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "It would be best if they are Nether Passage Realm demonic beasts." Demon monarch Mount Mang stood up and walked out of the cave. "Follow me." Yi Xian and Bai Zhe hurriedly followed. Outside the cave, Demon monarch Mount Mang suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground. In an instant, the entire ground shook violently. Soon, the surroundings began to tremble. Soon, a large group of demonic beasts suddenly surrounded them. There were all kinds of demonic beasts. Demon monarch Mount Mang swept his gaze across the area. "Nether Passage Realm, step forward." As soon as he finished speaking, over 20 demonic beasts arrived not far from Demon monarch Mount Mang. Yi Xian glanced at them. There were a total of 27 Nether Passage Realm demonic beasts. This was the elite force of Mount Mang. Demon monarch Mount Mang looked at Yi Xian. "There are a total of 27 demonic beasts. The rest are mostly Ascension Realm demonic beasts." Yi Xian nodded and walked in front of the group of demonic beasts. The group of demonic beasts also looked at Yi Xian, but there was no hostility in their eyes. Yi Xian looked around and finally chose 3 Ascension Realm demonic beasts. These 3 demonic beasts were at the peak of the Ascension Realm. Their auras were vigorous and showed signs of breaking through. 30 demonic beasts. Yi Xian looked at Demon monarch Mount Mang. Demon monarch Mount Mang glanced at the demonic beasts and pointed at Yi Xian. "From now on, all of you have to listen to his orders. If you are not convinced, challenge him now." Humans respected the strong, and it was even more so for demonic beasts. If Yi Xian wanted to recruit these powerful demonic beasts, he had to make them submit. It should be said that this was also a test from Demon Monarch Mount Mang for Yi Xian. If Yi Xian was not strong enough and monstrous enough, he would not let these demonic beasts go to Blue Wave's academy. In the field, the demonic beasts looked at each other. Finally, a demonic beast walked in front of Yi Xian. This demonic beast was shaped like a lion. It was huge and several meters tall. When it came in front of Yi Xian seemed too small compared to it. This demonic beast looked down at Yi Xian. Suddenly, it raised its paw and slapped at Yi Xian. The slap was like a small mountain pressing down. The powerful palm immediately caused the ground under Yi Xian's feet to crack. Bang! With a loud explosion, the demonic beast was sent flying. This time, it flew for a distance of several meters. All the demonic beasts were stunned. Soon, they looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was still in the same place, not moving at all. A mysterious power slowly receded from Yi Xian's body. It was the power of the earth. He had used the power of the earth just now. If he did not use the power of the earth, he would not be able to crush his opponent with just his physical strength. If he used his sword, he would either die or be injured. The demonic beast could not withstand the slash of the exquisite sword. Yi Xian walked in front of the group of demonic beasts. Is there anyone who is unconvinced? The group of demonic beasts looked at each other, but no one came out. Yi Xian turned to look at Demon King Mang Mountain. Demon King Mang Mountain glanced at the demonic beasts. Take them away. Yi Xian did not stay in Mang Mountain for long. After 15 minutes, he and Bai Zhe left Mang Mountain with 30 demonic beasts. They went straight to Two Realms City to meet up with Ling Han and the others. On the way, Yi Xian's voice transmission stone suddenly rang. Yi Xian stopped. After a moment, his face instantly darkened. Bai Zhe looked at Yi Xian. What's wrong? Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. The Great Cloud Empire has sent an envoy. They said that the Great Cloud Emperor wants to take our Jiang country's 9th princess as a concubine. At this point, he put away the voice transmission stone and sneered. Damn it. Did they ask me? End of this chapter. Chapter 146. Concubine. Bai Zhe glanced at Yi Xian. It might not be that simple. Yi Xian nodded. Let's go back and take a look. Let's go. With that, Yi Xian and Bai Zhe led the group of demon beasts and sped up. On a mountain peak, a middle-aged man looked down at Yi Xian and the others. The middle-aged man was expressionless with his right hand behind his back. Behind him stood a young man. The middle-aged man was Mu Qingxian of Kuraki Academy, and the young man was Xiahou Dao. Soon, Yi Xian, Bai Zhe, and the group of demon beasts disappeared into the distance. Mu Qingxian retracted his gaze and said softly, "Leave Azure Province immediately and head for the Divine Central Continent." Xiahou Dao looked at Mu Qingxian. Master, Mu Qingxian shook his head. You are the last hope of Great Cloud Continent's Kuraki Academy. Leave a spark. Xiahou Dao was somewhat shocked. Master, it has already reached this point. Mu Qingxian said softly, do you think the current situation is good? Xiahou Dao said in a low voice, Master, Kuraki Academy only lost 20 Dao soldiers. We are not in a hopeless situation. Mu Qingxian raised his head and looked off into the distance. Kuraki Academy hasn't admitted defeat, but he's just too much of a monster. Add to that the fact that he's befriended that group of geniuses from the Central Divine Prefecture, and the fact that the 10,000 Dharma realm can't act against them. They can sweep through the younger generation of the Azure Province. Xiahou Dao was somewhat puzzled. Master, didn't the Great Cloud Empire agree to help? Mu Qingxian said softly, they helped because they sensed danger. Yi Xian has befriended this group of people and roped in these demon beasts. If this continues, the state of Zhang's strength will definitely increase greatly. They only have one goal in marrying the state of Zhang's 9th princess, and that is to rope her in first and then take the opportunity to control the state of Zhang. After all, the 9th princess prestige in the state of Zhang is extremely high. Xiahou Dao said mockingly, the state of Zhang is not stupid. How can it fall for this? Mu Qingxian said with a smile, if the state of Zhang agrees, then it's naturally good. If not, the Great Cloud Empire can rightfully target them. Xiahou Dao said in a low voice, Master, I don't understand. Why does the Great Cloud Empire want to get involved in this mess? Mu Qingxian smiled and said, balance. Great Cloud Empire has to maintain the balance of neighboring empires. Now that Jiang country has defeated Tang country so easily, if Great Cloud Empire doesn't suppress it, Jiang country will definitely rise. This isn't what Great Cloud Empire wants to see. At this point, he sneered, besides, Chu Nation and Yu Nation are probably trembling in fear now. If Jiang Nation refuses to marry the 9th princess, Great Cloud Empire will not only have an excuse to target Jiang Nation, but also take advantage of this opportunity to subdue Chu Nation and Tang Nation. King Kaoshan isn't simple at all. As he spoke, he walked up to Xiahou Dao and patted him lightly on the shoulder. What comes next is a truly vicious battle. The Central Divine Prefecture has already realized the severity of the situation here, and it's extremely likely that our Grand Cloud Granary Academy in Qingzhou will be used as cannon fodder. Leave. Leave with the hope of our academy. With that, he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. In the same place, Xiahou Dao held his long saber and remained silent for a long time. Yi Xian, Bai Zhe, and the demonic beasts soon returned to Two Realms City. When the soldiers on the city wall saw Yi Xian, they immediately opened the gate and let him in. Not only that, but the soldiers on the city wall also saluted him. Yi Xian's prestige in Jiang country was very high now. After entering the city, Yi Xian asked Bai Zhe to settle the demonic beasts while he went to Jiang Zhou's tent. At this moment, Jiang Zhou was dealing with something. Jiang Zhou glanced at Yi Xian, you're back. Then, she lowered her head to deal with something. Yi Xian sat in front of Jiang Zhou. Did Great Cloud Empire send someone? Jiang Zhou nodded, they did. They said that Great Cloud Empire wants to take me as a concubine. Yi Xian asked, what did Jiang country say? Jiang Zhou stopped and looked at Yi Xian, what do you think? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, you should know their intention. Jiang Zhou said softly, do you know the strength of Great Cloud Empire? They are the strongest force in Azure Province. Whether it is Great Cloud Realm or Dark World, excluding the headquarters, they are inferior to them. Back then, their Black Flame army only used less than half a month to destroy a country at that time. Even Ning country's most powerful guard army is nothing in front of the Black Flame army. Yi Xian asked, Jiang country chose to compromise? Jiang Zhou chuckled, compromise is impossible. Even if I marry into Great Cloud Empire, they won't let Jiang country off. Moreover, this time, not only Great Cloud Empire, but also Kuraki College's headquarters and Dark World's headquarters. According to the intelligence I received, Kuraki College's headquarters and Dark World's headquarters are talking to Great Cloud Empire. They should have reached an agreement. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, how do we deal with it? Jiang Zhou looked at Yi Xian, take down Chu and Yu countries first, at least cripple them. We can't let them be used by Great Cloud Empire. Chu and Yu countries. Yi Xian pondered and nodded, I understand. Suddenly, a voice came from outside the tent, Marshal, the emissary of Great Cloud Empire is here. Jiang Zhou looked at Yi Xian and smiled, it must be my imperial father who pushed them here. Let's go and meet them. Yi Xian nodded. Both of them immediately entered the tent. A eunuch was standing outside the tent. Behind the eunuch were 10 guards armed with daggers. All of them were in Nether Passage realm. The eunuch glanced at Jiang Jiu coldly. Ninth princess, kneel down and receive the decree. Seeing this attitude, Yi Xian frowned. At this time, Jiang Jiu said with a smile, in the eyes of Great Cloud Empire, we are a small country, a barbarian. So they won't respect us. Then, she looked at the eunuch, am I right? The eunuch frowned. Ninth princess, are you provoking me? Jiang Jiu shook his head with a smile, I dare not. Eunuch, please speak your mind. The eunuch walked to Jiang Jiu and sneered, what? Even the dignified princess of Jiang country doesn't know etiquette? Do you need me to teach you? Jiang Jiu chuckled, then looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian walked to the eunuch and opened his right hand, revealing a black crossbow. Yi Xian said, this is from Great Cloud Empire, right? The eunuch glanced at the crossbow in Yi Xian's hand and frowned. Supreme grade crossbow. Then, he looked at Yi Xian with undisguised killing intent in his eyes. Sure enough, those people have died in your hands. How dare you? At this time, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. After saying that, he disappeared on the spot. Pa! Along with the clear sound of a slap, the eunuch's entire body was directly sent flying. This time, he flew over 100 feet away. Seeing Yi Xian suddenly attack, the guards were about to attack, but at this time, a flying sword slashed across the field. Chi! A guard's head flew off instantly, blood spurting out like a fountain. The rest of the guards were dumbfounded. He was killed in an instant. Yi Xian ignored the guards and walked to the eunuch not far away. I won't kill you. Go back and tell Great Cloud Empire not to play these tricks. If you want to fight, then fight. Now get lost. The eunuch stared at Yi Xian. You lowly person, you will pay for what you did today. You, Yi Xian suddenly slashed with his sword. He slashed with his sword. Chi! The eunuch's head flew off instantly. All the spectators were stunned. Yi Xian sheathed his sword and turned to look at the guards. Now, you're here to bring a message. Do you have anything to say? The group of guards took a deep look at Yi Xian, then turned and left. If they said anything at this moment, they would undoubtedly be courting death. Yi Xian looked at Jiang Jiu. Now, Jiang country has no choice but to fight. There won't be any other voices. With that, he turned and left. Jiang Jiu looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. How could she not know that Yi Xian didn't kill to show off, but to let the people of Jiang country know that they could only fight? Previously, some ministers in the imperial court were in favor of marrying the 9th princess because Great Cloud Empire couldn't afford to offend them. But now, with Yi Xian's sword, no one in Jiang country would talk about marriage anymore. Everyone could only choose to fight. Otherwise, they would kill Yi Xian and go to Great Cloud Empire to beg for forgiveness. But now, given Yi Xian's prestige, who would dare to touch him? It could be said that Yi Xian's sword saved Jiang Jiu a lot of trouble. Great Cloud Empire. Jiang Jiu turned to look at the horizon with a trace of worry in her eyes because things were getting more and more troublesome. Great Cloud Empire. It was the largest power in Azure Province, as well as the headquarters of Kuraki Academy and the Assassins of Dark World. How could Jiang country deal with these three powers? However, Jiang country had no choice. Yi Xian and Jiang country were already tied together. Even if they sent Yi Xian to these three powers, they wouldn't let Jiang country go. Or rather, it would be worse. With Yi Xian around, the three forces would still be fearful. After all, Yi Xian had a sword immortal backing him up. No matter how hard the three forces tried, they would not dare to send out the 10,000 Dharma realm. Without Yi Xian, 5 or 6 people from the 10,000 Dharma realm could easily destroy the Jiang country. In any case, things were getting more and more serious. In a tent, Yi Xian gathered Lu Banzwang and the others, and they sat around a table. Yi Xian glanced at them and said, I've already asked the drunken immortal in to purchase some God Union pills and bright grade equipment. They will arrive in 8 or 9 days, so there are about 8 days left. You guys should prepare. Oh, right, if you have God Union pills, are you confident that you can break through to the Divine Union tier? We've been stuck at the Nether Passage tier for a long time. If we have God Union pills, we'll definitely be able to break through to the Divine Union tier. Yi Xian nodded, and said, that's good. Ah. Just at this moment, a shrill scream suddenly came from outside the tent. Yi Xian and the others directly appeared outside the tent. At this time, Jiang Jiu arrived in front of Yi Xian and the others. All around, countless soldiers surrounded Yi Xian and the others, protecting Yi Xian and the others. What's going on? Yi Xian asked. At this moment, a group of soldiers carried a dozen or so corpses to Jiang Jiu. Jiang Jiu's expression was dark, and he said, they're all generals of my army, assassins of the Dark Realm. As she said this, she raised her head and looked into the distance. They've begun to move. Just at this moment, 15 meters to the right of Yi Xian, the head of a soldier suddenly flew into the air. Without any warning. Everyone present was astonished. Yi Xian appeared beside that soldier, yet he didn't discover anything. It's the Dark Realm Dao soldiers. Nearby, Lu Banzwang said in a low voice, elite-level Dark Realm Dao soldiers. Lu Banzwang had just finished speaking when the heads of 3 soldiers suddenly flew into the air from 6 meters away. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 147. Everyone present was shocked. It should be said that they were terrified. Especially those soldiers, whose eyes were filled with terror at this moment, because they didn't even know how those people had died. Even Ling Han and the others wore solemn expressions. This was really a little terrifying. Dark Realm Dao soldiers. Yi Xian looked towards Lu Banzwang. Lu Banzwang was silent for a moment, and then shook his head. Wait for daybreak. At night, they will use their cultivation technique to merge with the darkness, and it will be difficult to discover. Daybreak. Yi Xian frowned. If they waited for daybreak, wouldn't countless soldiers of the Jiang country die when the sky turned dark? At this moment, screams suddenly came from all over the military camp. Seeing this, Jiang Jiu's expression gradually became a little twisted. At this moment, Yi Xian was suddenly stunned, because a piece of paper suddenly floated out from the entrance of the second level of the prison tower. On the paper, there was only a pair of eyes. Human eyes. Yi Xian was stunned, and the next moment, he suddenly came to a realization. Sword eyes. He was the Sword Eyes. At this thought, he hurriedly calmed down. Soon, he could clearly sense everything around him. Suddenly, Yi Xian suddenly turned around, and then opened his eyes. Chi Chi. 2 flashes of sword light shot out. Several meters away, there was suddenly an explosion beside a soldier, and then a blurry ghostly figure was sent flying backward. The next moment, a flying sword suddenly flashed past the battlefield. Chi. On the ground in the distance, there was suddenly a lot of blood, and gradually, a man in black appeared in everyone's sight. Yi Xian waved his right hand lightly, and the spirit-elegant sword flew in front of him, and the surroundings suddenly fell silent. The soldiers present all looked on alert, cold sweat on their foreheads. Sometimes, death wasn't scary, but the process of waiting for death was scary. At this moment, Yi Xian said softly, "They're all gone." Hearing this, the soldiers present instantly breathed a sigh of relief. However, Yi Xian, Jiang Jiu, and the others' expressions were still grave. Yi Xian glanced at Lu Banzwang. "Be careful." After saying this, he looked at Jiang Jiu. "Let's talk inside." Jiang Jiu nodded slightly and entered the tent with Yi Xian. Jiang Jiu sat down and said in a low voice, "The morale of the army is unstable." Yi Xian nodded, "I know, I will think of a way to solve it." Jiang Jiu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, These assassins are not something that you and your soldiers can deal with. I will think of a way to deal with them. What you need to do now is to stabilize the morale of the troops and protect yourself. The real target of those killers just now was you. Jiang Zhou's death was undoubtedly a fatal blow to the entire state of Jiang. Jiang Zhou nodded. I will be careful. However, their main target should still be you and your friends. You guys should be the ones who must be careful. Yi Xian replied, I know, I will go and discuss with them. You should immediately inform the imperial capital and ask the emperor to send someone here. With that, he turned around and left the tent. Yi Xian returned to his tent. He sat cross-legged on the ground and entered the World Prison Pagoda. At this moment, a piece of paper floated out from the entrance. On it was a small paw print. Yi Xian was speechless. He was speechless. Yi Xian was speechless. He was really speechless. Most of the time, he really could not understand what the god on the second floor meant. It was just a paw print. Who could understand it? Another piece of paper floated out. There was an additional palm on the paper. This palm was not the cat claw from before, but a human palm. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. God, can't you speak? Boom. At this moment, the second floor suddenly shook violently. A powerful force directly sent Yi Xian flying. Bang! Yi Xian crashed onto the ground. At this moment, he felt as though his entire body was about to fall apart. Yi Xian buried his head on the ground and wailed in his heart. This was 2F** king bullying. At this moment, another piece of paper floated out. On the paper was a human's mouth. There was also an unknown mouth. In between the human's mouth and this unknown mouth, there was a small symbol. Behind the unknown mouth, there was a question mark symbol. What the F*** did this mean? Yi Xian did not want to live anymore. At this moment, the second floor suddenly shook violently. Yi Xian quickly got up. Don't. Let's talk nicely. I'll study it. After saying that, he quickly picked up the paper to study it. After a while, his face suddenly darkened. Because he roughly understood the meaning of this piece of paper. The guy on the second floor was asking him why he did not speak its language. Simply put, the guy on the second floor should not be able to speak the human language. Not from this world. Yi Xian was puzzled. Another piece of paper floated out. On the paper, there was a claw overlapping with a human palm. Overlapping. Yi Xian frowned and thought for a long time. At this moment, the second floor suddenly shook again. Yi Xian's face changed and he quickly said, I understand. It stopped on the second floor. Yi Xian said cautiously, you mean, you want to merge with me? Or, you want to use my body to come out? At this moment, another piece of paper floated out. On the paper, there was a square root symbol. Yi Xian, possession. This word came to Yi Xian's mind. Yi Xian quickly shook his head. No. Possession? It was scary just thinking about it. In the past, he had heard that some powerful experts would seize control of the body. If the guy on the second floor wanted to do that, it definitely wouldn't work. Another piece of paper floated out. Just like this, Yi Xian communicated with the guy on the second floor. After about half an hour, Yi Xian was so tired that he sat on the ground. It was really too tiring. Especially if he answered incorrectly, the god on the second floor would make a move. It was too much of a bully. He tried to resist, but he really couldn't beat him. Finally, Yi Xian glanced at the entrance to the second floor. How about this? According to our previous agreement, you can come out twice in a month. You can come out on your own once, and I can ask to come out the other time. Is that okay? After a while, a piece of paper floated out from the second floor. On the paper was a small square root symbol. Seeing this, Yi Xian immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want to agree, but he had no choice. This guy on the second floor was not a kind person. If he didn't agree, he didn't know what this guy would do. He really couldn't afford to offend him now. Yi Xian left the prison pagoda and went to Lu Banzwang's tent. Lu Banzwang was eating flatbread and had a green onion in her left hand. Yi Xian sat in front of Lu Banzwang. Are there any assassin organizations like the Dark World in the Central Plains? Lu Banzwang paused. After a long time, she nodded. Yes. Yi Xian quickly asked, can you invite them? Lu Banzwang shook her head. No. Why? Yi Xian didn't understand. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian and said, we can't invite them. Moreover, those assassins are insatiably greedy. It's easy to invite them in, but difficult to send them away. We can only deal with this matter ourselves. Yi Xian fell silent. He wasn't afraid of those assassins. With the sword eye, those assassins didn't dare to approach him. He also discovered that as long as those assassins showed themselves, their battle prowess wasn't very strong. The strength of these assassins lay in their unpredictability. Most importantly, these assassins weren't targeting him, but the soldiers of the Jiang nation. This was the most hurtful thing. In fact, it wasn't just these soldiers. Ling Han and the others were also in danger. Right now, Ling Han and the others were all gathered together. They didn't dare to separate because it was really too dangerous. At this moment, a voice traveled over from outside the Drunken Immortal Inn. Young friend, please come out for a gathering. The fifth floor master. Yi Xian faltered, and then walked out of the tent with Lu Banzwang. Outside the tent, the fifth floor master smiled faintly. Then, with a tap of his finger, a storage ring appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he said, I've gathered everything that young friend needs. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He asked, Senior, why is it so fast? The fifth floor master smiled, and said, Young friend, you might not know this, but after learning that young friend is in urgent need, the second floor master of the Drunken Immortal Inn personally issued orders to the various Drunken Immortal Inns of the Central Divine Continent, ordering them to search for what young friend needs at all costs. That's why it's so fast. Hearing this, Yi Xian clasped his hands in greeting to the fifth floor master, and said, I can't thank you enough. I, Yi Xian, will truly remember this favor. After saying this, he looked at Lu Banzwang. Lu Banzwang nodded, and then called Ling Han and the others over. It wasn't long before they distributed the gold coins to the fifth floor master. The fifth floor master didn't refuse, and accepted the gold coins. Then, he tapped with his finger, and a pure white alchemical pill bottle appeared in front of Yi Xian and the others. God Union Pill. Ling Han and the others were slightly excited when they saw these alchemical pills. That was because with these God Union pills, they would be able to break through to the Divine Union tier right away. If they didn't have these pills, then they would need at least 2 to 3 years to break through to the Divine Union tier, or perhaps even longer. At this moment, the fifth floor master tapped again, and a storage ring appeared in front of Ling Han and the others. Everyone looked at the fifth floor master, and the fifth floor master smiled, and said, There is a clear grade spirit tool in the storage ring, and it was purchased according to your requirements. However, it's best to use it after you reach the Divine Union tier. That way, the effects will be even greater. Yi Xian looked at Ling Han and the others, and said, Go to the tent and consume it. Banzwang and I will stand guard for you. The fifth floor master hesitated for a moment, and then said, Young friend, it might be very dangerous to break through now. Yi Xian shook his head, and said, We won't have time after this, and they won't give us time either. The earlier we break through, the better. The fifth floor master thought for a moment, and then nodded. That's true. He hesitated for a moment, and then said, Young friend, there's a message from the Central Divine Continent. This time, the Central Divine Continent's Kuraki Academy and the Dark Realm have started to target you. Yi Xian smiled, and said, What a great reputation. The fifth-floor master said seriously, "Young friend, you have a senior sword immortal behind you, so how could they dare to underestimate you? They have allied with the Great Cloud Empire, and the three forces have joined forces. Young friend, you and the Jiang country should be extremely careful." Yi Xian nodded, and said, "Thank you for the reminder, senior." The fifth-floor master nodded, and said, "That's right, the Drunken Immortal Inn has sent 30 Dao soldiers here, and they will arrive by tomorrow at the latest." Lu Banzwang and the others were slightly moved when they heard this. The Drunken Immortal Inn was determined to support Yi Xian. Actually, this was normal, because the Drunken Immortal Inn had already bet too much on Yi Xian and the mysterious woman. Now, they wouldn't stop, and they would fight to the end. Yi Xian clasped his fists at the fifth-floor master and said, "I'll definitely return the favor in the future." The fifth-floor master shook his head slightly, and said, "To be more realistic, the Drunken Immortal Inn does indeed want to rope you in, but it's not completely like that. There is indeed friendship involved. I won't say much, so take care of yourself, young friend." After saying this, he turned around and vanished on the spot. Yi Xian looked at Ling Han and the others. Ling Han and the others were just about to enter the tent, but at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Go outside the city." Everyone looked at Yi Xian, and they were all confused. A cold smirk appeared at the corners of Yi Xian's lips. "I want to break through right under their noses, and I want them to stop you." Ling Han hesitated, and then said, "Big brother, isn't this too crazy?" Yi Xian grinned, and said, "I want to be crazy, and I want to play with my life. Don't worry, even if I have to die, I, the big brother, will be the first to die." As he said this, he waved his hand, and said, "Leave the city." Everyone exchanged a look, and then followed Yi Xian out of Two Realms City. In an empty space outside the city, Ling Han, Mo Yunqi, and the others sat cross-legged on the ground after consuming the god-congealing pill. Not far away, Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang stood. Yi Xian pointed the spirit-elegant sword at the ground. He looked around, and grinned. "Don't hide. Come, I beg you, do me." Wang. A sword cry resounded through the sky. P.S. Thank you for all the readers' blessings and monthly votes yesterday. Thank you so much. I'm temporarily first in the monthly votes, and this is the result of everyone's hard work. No matter if it's Sword Realm or Venerable Sword, no one has ever been first in the monthly votes. So, I won't beat around the bush. I want to ask for monthly votes. Friends who don't have monthly votes, please leave a message and praise me well. Praise me for my handsomeness. There's no limit to the number of words. If you praise me well, I'll increase the quality, and even set a. Maybe there's a mystery prize. Come on, start praising me. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 148. The battlefield was silent. Yi Xian stood in front of Ling Han and the others with the spirit-elegant sword in his hand, which exuded a cold sword light. It was a sharp display. Yi Xian and the sword in his hand gave off such a feeling, as if it could even pierce a hole in the sky. Not far to the right of Yi Xian was Lu Banzwang. Lu Banzwang's eyes were closed, and she looked like an old monk in meditation. Actually, she was a little sleepy and wanted to sleep. And on the other side, on the city wall, was Jiang Jiu and a group of soldiers. Jiang Jiu was still dressed in silver armor. She just looked at Yi Xian below, and as she looked, she suddenly smiled. One smile could charm hundreds. Below the city wall, the moonlight was weak, and only blurry figures could be seen. It could be said that this was the best time for the killers to strike. In this kind of environment, they were definitely like tigers that had grown wings. However, it was strangely quiet below the city wall, and no one made a move. Because this was too abnormal. Logically speaking, Yi Xian and the soldiers of the Jiang country should be very careful when Ling Han and the others broke through. But now, Yi Xian openly allowed Ling Han and the others to break through outside the city, and no soldiers came to help guard. This was very abnormal. There had to be something wrong. For a moment, the killers in the dark did not make a move. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. Under the moonlight, Ling Han and the others broke through to the divine combination tier without any scruples. And they did not have any scruples at all. Because they believed in Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang. Yi Xian swung the Spirit Elegance sword lightly with his right hand. The Spirit Elegance sword was instantly suffused with rays of resplendent sword light. He looked around. There were some people hiding in the dark. However, these people did not dare to come too close. Obviously, after he killed a Dark World Dao soldier previously, these killers were still a little fearful of him. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly walked to Lu Banzwang's side. Although Lu Banzwang was standing ramrod straight, his head was slightly drooping, and he was snoring. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. He lightly pulled on the corner of Lu Banzwang's clothes. "Don't sleep, be more serious." Lu Banzwang pursed his lips and ignored Yi Xian, continuing to snore. Yi Xian was speechless. Why was this woman so unreliable? Feeling helpless, Yi Xian walked to the other side. Seemingly bored, he suddenly started practicing his swordsmanship. His sword techniques were very simple, just stabbing, lifting, chopping, and slicing. These ordinary sword techniques became extraordinary under his control. He was now a Sword Dao Grandmaster, and he had his own unique understanding and grasp of the sword. Especially when it came to deciding life and death with one sword. Deciding life and death with one sword was a kind of Sword Dao belief. My sword will take your life. How domineering was that? How confident was this swordsman? To put it bluntly, he was confident. If the swordsman did not have confidence in himself, this strike would have been weak and harmless. Confidence was also a kind of Sword Dao, or rather, it was a part of Sword Dao. Thinking of this, Yi Xian suddenly felt his entire body relax, and the exquisite sword in his hand trembled violently. Then, it suddenly broke free from his hand and soared into the sky. Everyone in the square looked at the exquisite sword. The exquisite sword left streaks of sword gleam in the sky as it shuttled through the air. The sword could communicate with people. Any of Yi Xian's thoughts could affect the exquisite sword in his hand. Swordsman. On the city wall, everyone looked at the Lingxiu sword with excitement. That was the swordsman of the country of Jiang. If this chapter is not over, please continue to the next page. Jiang Zhou's eyes also had a strange glint. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm from afar. The exquisite sword fell from the sky like a bolt of lightning and landed steadily in Yi Xian's palm. Holding the exquisite sword, Yi Xian suddenly looked around and roared, "Who dares to fight me? Who dares to fight me?" The surroundings were silent, and there was no movement at all. Yi Xian pointed his sword towards the darkness in the distance and said fiercely, "I want to fight you. I want to kill." Everyone on the city wall was speechless. There was still no movement at all below the city wall. Yi Xian suddenly loosened his palm, and the exquisite sword turned into a sword gleam and stabbed into the ground nearby. Then, he took a dozen steps forward and opened his arms. "Come, I don't need a sword. Please hit me." Just as he finished speaking, a man walked out from the darkness in the distance. The man was in his 20s and wore a black robe with a white background. He was handsome. The man walked in front of Yi Xian and sized up Yi Xian. Then, he said, "Qingzhou Martial Leaderboard." Yi Xian suddenly disappeared on the spot. The man's pupils constricted. He sprinted forward and waved his palm. A dazzling palm gleam vibrated out from the center of his palm. At this moment, Yi Xian's fist arrived. It was a ferocious punch. Bang! As soon as their palms and fists collided, both the man and Yi Xian retreated repeatedly at the same time. But it wasn't long before both of them stopped at the same time. The man glanced at Yi Xian. In the next moment, his figure suddenly became illusory. In the blink of an eye, an afterimage flashed and charged straight at Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian slowly clenched his right hand into a fist. Crack! The ground beneath his feet instantly collapsed. At the same time, his right sleeve was instantly shattered into pieces. His entire right arm bulged up while his veins were exposed, and it was an extremely shocking sight. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly smashed his fist forward. A strand of monstrous aura and battle intent surged out from his fist like a volcanic eruption. "I'll smash your head with a single punch." Bang! An explosion resounded abruptly, and then the man retreated explosively over 30 m away. As soon as he stopped moving, the ground beneath his feet instantly cracked apart, and then the crack spread towards the surroundings. In an instant, the area in an area of over 10 m around him had cracked into a spiderweb. The man wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and then he raised his head to gaze at Yi Xian, who stood nearby. "You really do cultivate in both the sword and martial arts." "You." Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. The man's pupils constricted, and then he flashed backwards. As soon as he dodged, the ground beneath him had exploded into a deep hole. Moreover, he hadn't even stopped moving when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, Yi Xian raised his right leg and swept it towards the man. The powerful gale from this kick tore apart the clothes on the man's upper body. The man's expression changed drastically. Because he'd lost the initiative, he was unable to gather force, and he could only raise his right arm to block. Bang! The man crashed to the ground over 30 m away, and as soon as he landed, Yi Xian suddenly charged forward. This charge was like a cheetah pouncing on its prey, and it was extremely swift. However, Yi Xian suddenly stopped when he was around 1.5 m away from the man, and then he turned around and smashed his fist forward. Bang! In front of Yi Xian, a silver arrow was smashed into pieces. But he was pushed back dozens of feet. Not only that, but his entire fist was cracked. Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. In the distant darkness, a person was aiming at him with a bow and arrow. On the other hand, the man behind him had already retreated over 30 m away, and he'd completely distanced himself from Qinshi. The man stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and there was dense fear in his eyes. This chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stretched out his right hand, and the spirit elegant sword flew out from the ground in the distance before it descended into his hand. The expression of the man behind him instantly changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he was about to retreat. However, Yi Xian had already arrived in front of him at this moment. A single sword strike to decide life and death. When he saw this sword strike, the man was instantly filled with despair. However, he still had the desire to live. At this critical moment, the profound energy within his body surged madly, and in the blink of an eye, he suddenly slapped his right palm forward. An earth-rank martial technique. As soon as this palm appeared, the ground started to crack inch by inch. It could be said that even an ordinary expert at the divine conglomerate realm would find it difficult to withstand this palm strike. However, as soon as Yi Xian's sword arrived. Hiss! The spirit elegant sword directly pierced through the man's entire right arm, and the man instinctively wanted to retreat. However, at this moment, Yi Xian slashed horizontally with his sword. Hiss! The man's head instantly flew into the air, and fresh blood sprayed everywhere. It was extremely bloody. At the moment his head fell to the ground, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and opened his eyes. Hiss! 2 rays of sword light shot out, and a silver arrow in front of him was instantly shattered by the sword light. Yi Xian gestured with his right hand, and the spatial ring on the man's corpse instantly flew into his palm. There were actually 3 supreme-grade spirit artifacts and over 100,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. There were even over 7 million gold coins. He had made a small fortune. Putting away the spatial ring, Yi Xian turned around and looked into the distance. He could feel that in the darkness, there was a person aiming a bow and arrow at him. It should be said that there was more than one person in the darkness. The Dark Realm and Kuraki Academy would definitely not give up, because if Ling Han and the others reached the divine conglomerate tier, it would undoubtedly be very, very disadvantageous to them. This was something that Yi Xian was also very clear about. Thus, he knew that the Dark Realm, Kuraki Academy, and even the Great Cloud Empire would soon make their move. And he had no choice but to face them head-on. After Yi Xian put away the spatial ring, he walked to Lu Banzwang's side. Lu Banzwang was still sleeping, and she was really sleeping, not pretending. This was also the reason why Yi Xian was speechless. This heart was not just an ordinary kind of heart. As Yi Xian stopped, the surroundings once again quieted down, and only the howling of the cold wind could be heard. Meanwhile, the auras of Ling Han and the others were becoming stronger and stronger. Ling Han and the others were all elites at the peak stage of the Nether Passage tier, so there was definitely no problem in terms of talent and foundation. After obtaining the Divine Conglomerate Pill, it would definitely be no problem for them to reach the Divine Conglomerate tier. Of course, the biggest problem was whether they could live to break through to the Divine Conglomerate tier. Yi Xian glanced at Ling Han and the others, his right hand slowly tightening around the spirit elegant sword in his hand. If everyone really couldn't withstand it and died, then he, Yi Xian, would be the first to die. Time passed bit by bit, and it was almost dawn. It was the darkest before dawn. Right now, it could be said that one could not even see their own fingers in front of them. Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang stood in front of Ling Han and the others, their faces expressionless. Suddenly, there was a slight movement in the darkness in the distance. Yi Xian lightly pulled on the corner of Lu Banzwang's clothes with his right hand. "Big sister, wake up, there's going to be a fight." Lu Banzwang pushed Yi Xian's hand away, and muttered, "Give me 10 more flatbread." Yi Xian's face was filled with black lines. *CK, was she talking in her sleep? Sensing that something was slowly approaching, Yi Xian hurriedly pulled on Lu Banzwang's sleeve again. "Customer, your flatbread is here." Lu Banzwang suddenly opened his eyes. Yi Xian, end of this chapter. You're tuning into the A Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.